Now I think everyone is here and we are ready to roll. Sorry about that. I had a false start there almost. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the School District of Waukesha Board of Education meeting on January 13th, 2021. I hope everyone is off to a good start to the 2021 new year. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to get our meeting started. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who will you please take the roll call?
William Baumgart.
Here.
Corey Montiel.
Here.
Greg Dietz. Amanda Roddy.
Here.
Diane Boyd. Here. Patrick McCaffrey.
Here.
Kurt O'Brien.
Here.
Karen Reinacek.
Here.
Joseph Como.
Here. Greg Dietz is excused tonight, Sue. And Sue, have we been properly posted with the media?
Yes, we have.
Thank you for doing that. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. I'd like to start off with an inspirational moment here. One of the most sincere forms of respect is actually listening to what another has to say. Bryant H. McGill. Tonight I ask that we do respect one another. I know we have differences of opinions. This is really a very unique time that we're in. And the way we show respect is to allow a person to view their point of view and to share it with us and have us listen to it respectfully. So I hope we do that throughout this evening. To get bright lights off and running, Dr. Siebert, will you please talk about, we have been looking at the people in our district, and I know many people do this, but we're trying to highlight each month people going the extra mile. Will you please present this month's winners, if you wish?
I would love to, Mr. Como. So, as you said, the district is full of incredible people who are working very, very hard this year to make education possible and keep the ship afloat and moving. And this month, we would like to recognize two departments here in the Lindholm building who have been instrumental to ensuring that our people in the trenches have everything that they need and that our schools are consistently running. So that would be the business office and our human resources office. And so I'm going to allow Darren to talk a little bit about the business office, and then Sharon is going to talk about HR. They have come together in so many meaningful ways. COVID has presented so many different types of challenges in terms of the financial picture as well as the personnel picture. And so we'll let the two of them talk a little bit about their exceptional, they won't talk about their exceptional leadership of those departments, but they will talk about the exceptional people within those departments. Go ahead, Darren. Sharon's going to go first. Okay.
Okay. So we know that everyone is working very hard right now, but I really appreciate the recognition for the HR department and the business office. So my team, which sometimes has expanded into other departments when needed, has worked tirelessly keeping up the extra work that came with the pandemic. They have worked in close collaboration with the business office, which Darren will recognize right after me, trying to share the workload to make sure the district functions could continue to run smoothly. From being proactive with substitutes and constant hiring and onboarding of staff, to calculating back pay and DPI reports, to tracking time off and quarantines, to creating meaningful recognition of past retirees during a pandemic, along with all the regularly scheduled duties that they have. We've learned to be flexible, rely on each other, take a deep breath, laugh when we need to, and get creative to stay afloat. So I truly appreciate everyone's efforts who's helped us in the HR department. And here's Darren to speak about the business department.
Yeah, the health emergency has impacted every department, system, and process in our district. One of the more critical roles that HR and business office provide is to develop a framework, a set of standards, and a level of stability from which the district can function around. This stability was certainly shaken with all the unknowns and new demands in the last 10 months. Through it all, the business office staff has ensured bills were paid, payroll was processed, benefits were administered, the budget was built, gyms were scheduled, the audit was completed, the food service program was managed, PPEs were still purchased, most importantly, board packets were still created, and countless other tasks. You wonder if all of us would have known how complex and daunting this task was going to be, would we have been overwhelmed by the challenge? Instead, we have the benefit of hindsight and can simply sit back and be amazed at what our staffs, both HR and business office, have accomplished. They are great people, they do great things, and we are thankful to work with them.
Yeah, so thank you, both Sharon and Darren. And there's just wonderful people in both of those departments, and we are very grateful for their flexibility and for their stick-to-itness and for the great work that they continue to do to keep the district moving forward. So let's give them all a round of applause.
Yes, I'd like to extend my personal thanks to a number of the people in those departments. I know that I've asked personally for people to do extra things that go above and beyond, and everyone's been willing to help out with anything at any time. And it's just, it feels good to be a part of a team that just really wants to move forward, and we thank both of those departments. Moving on, continue with some recognitions. Sharon Thede, you're up again. I won't. Okay. I'll keep it a secret.
Okay, I'm back. Hi. Another one of my favorite parts is to be able to do the employee recognition. So I want to congratulate Amber Williams, who's a health room clerical at Randall STEM, on being named Employee of the Month. So Amber began building her relationships with STEM Randall staff and students while serving as a substitute health room assistant for the school district. She stood out right away as a person who cares deeply about her work and those around her, and quickly became the go-to person for the health room sub. During the 1920 school year, she became a permanent member of the Randall team, working 3 days a week in a job share in the health room position. Even while part-time and then while furloughed, she stayed in touch with the school and was instrumental in providing feedback and recommendations for implementing new COVID safety procedures as school resumed. Randall was thrilled to have her to commit to the full-time position in the health room this year. She's been meticulous in researching and keeping up to date on procedures and recommendations surrounding COVID-19, as well as tracking dates for ill and quarantined students, often volunteering her time on nights and weekends to ensure she is informed and ready to advise parents and staff with questions surrounding protocols. No matter how stressful things get or how tense the situation is, Amber is calm, caring, and patient with every staff member, parent, and student that she encounters. By keeping up to date with the district and CDC guidelines and being familiar with each student's pre-existing health condition, Amber is able to carefully assess students' symptoms and make appropriate decisions regarding isolation. This has kept a great sense of normalcy in the building by limiting the number of full class quarantines needed. Amber puts everyone at ease and has been a key player in the success of Randall during this unique time. All of this is in addition to always being on top of her regular responsibilities, as well as serving as Randall's Sunshine Ambassador, coordinating gifts and recognition for staff members who are experiencing big life events. She keeps up with it all and is always willing to pitch in anywhere that's needed. Clerical projects, covering lunch, recess, front desk duties, wherever she's needed. She is always positive and looks for ways to spread that positivity to the rest of the staff. So on behalf of the School District of Waukesha, I would like to congratulate Amber Williams on being selected to receive the Employee Recognition Award. I go right through the middle.
Kind of like entering into Lambeau Field. You can do this too.
Take a picture again.
How did you like running through the tunnel?
Well, this is beautiful, and I was not expecting to hear all of those nice things about myself. While I appreciate this greatly, I don't feel that I am worthy of any sort of recognition or award. I'm just one part of a marvelous team at STEM. It's because of this magic and wonder that I and 320 students look forward to coming to Randall STEM every day, and I am forever grateful to be a part of our staff. My career life goal has been to make a positive impact in people's lives, no matter the role in which I have been working. And when I left the corporate world to go back to school and pursue my education degree, I assumed that I would end up working in a classroom and teaching, because what better way to make a positive impact in lives, right? But however, when I found this role, it was as if it had been created just for me. Working in the health room allows me to apply bits and pieces of my experience in education, the clerical field, healthcare, and management. And now I have the opportunity to make a positive impact in the lives of so many of our students and families, whether it's taking temperatures and happily greeting students in the morning, administering daily medications, or helping families navigate the ever-changing world of quarantines and COVID protocol. At STEM, in the midst of a pandemic and political turmoil that has brought fear and negativity into the lives of many people, including our children, we have created a haven where students and staff alike feel the positivity and inspiration in the environment we are striving to provide every day. Thank you for this, and just for the privilege of being here this evening.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
That was excellent. Moving on to our student representative report tonight. We do rotate schools, and tonight we have a couple of special students joining us from eAchieve, and Principal Jason Smith. Hey, Jason.
Hello.
Will be
Good evening.
introducing those students.
Sounds good. Thanks. Thanks for inviting us. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to celebrate some of our students' success. So I'm Jason Smith. I'm the interim principal at eAchieve Academy, and I'm going to turn it over to our two student reps that are with us tonight. We have Catherine Zimmerman, who is here from Boyd, Wisconsin, near Chippewa Falls. Kat's been at eAchieve for 7 years. And Heather Winger, she is coming to us from Madison, Wisconsin, and this is her 3rd year. So we're going to let Kat kick things off.
Welcome, ladies.
Kat, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story and your year at eAchieve.
Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Okay. You're on, Catherine.
Okay. In kindergarten, I started out in a private Christian school. My mom was my teacher. The curriculum we used was ACE PACES. By 3rd grade, I was homeschooled fully, using the same PACES as I did in school. A few years later, I started to rebel against doing my schoolwork, and as my parents looked for other options, I brought up eAchieve. My sister had interest in eAchieve a few years before that, and I wanted to try it out. So in the middle of my 2nd semester of 6th grade, I started at eAchieve part-time in math and science. It was a big challenge at first, as I had to learn all the technology and catch up to be on pace. In 7th grade, I started full-time, and I was a B average student all through middle school, and was excited to be on the B honor roll. Skipping ahead to high school, at the end of my freshman year, I had discovered what my passion was, and this made me want to work even harder to achieve my dream. I was introduced into AVID my sophomore year. In my first semester of 10th grade, my GPA was 3.4. My mom told me that I could do just a little bit better so that I could get on the A honor roll. So that is what I did. After my final grades came out, my GPA for second semester was 3.8. I was literally blown away. I didn't know that AVID had helped me so much until the end of that year. I had learned to take useful notes and keep them organized. I learned to make a plan and schedule for each week. I learned many things about college careers and life skills. Tutorials helped me to learn to speak up in class and be more comfortable with my teachers and classmates. The biggest thing I learned from AVID was how to ask questions. I always thought that I was stupid for asking questions, but if I didn't ask questions, I wouldn't learn anything. AVID taught me that no question is stupid, and asking questions is actually pretty smart. Now this year, I am a senior. I have been at EHE for 7 years now. I have taken AVID every semester since 10th grade. I am the co-president of the National Honor Society chapter. I have always counted down how many years of school I had left, and now here I am. I have 6 months left, and the crazy thing is that I don't really want to graduate, because then I have to leave all my favorite teachers that pushed me and taught me all the knowledge I use today. And the fact is that I wouldn't really be where I am without EHE.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Kat. Heather, your turn.
My story with EHE is quite different from Kat's. I went to a private Catholic high school from kindergarten through 9th grade in Madison, and then I transferred to a local public school at the beginning of my sophomore year. And I was actually really happy there. I was starting to get involved in the clubs. I went to my first homecoming there, but that October I started to develop some health issues, and going to school in a physical setting wasn't really feasible. I still really didn't want to do EHE. I saw transitioning to online school as more of a failure on my part, that I couldn't keep up with real school. So I pushed it off until the spring of 2019, when I started with just 3 classes, part-time, halfway through second semester. And I really ended up loving going to online school. I am a very motivated student, so that kind of environment where it's self-directed learning really, really works for me. And so I stayed for my junior year, and here I am in my senior year. And I'm now a member of National Honor Society. I'm able to volunteer regularly during the week because of the flexibility that allows me. And I'm really, really happy with my school, more so than I was at either of my previous high schools.
Thank you, Heather.
Would you both just give the board just a quick update on your plans after graduation? I think that's a pretty exciting celebration for both of you.
I've been accepted into UW-Madison for their intended Doctor of Pharmacy program in the College of Letters and Sciences.
I plan to go to Nicolet Technical College in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, my first year, and transfer to UW Stevens Point and pursue a career in park ranger.
Well, thank you both. I guess we could turn it over. Do any of the board members have any questions for our first rep?
Yes, Diane.
Heather, I'd like to ask you what kind of volunteering you're having the opportunity to do as in your leisure time, in your flexible schedule, I should say, involved in
So during my time at EHE, I've worked with 2 organizations. One's called Angel's Wish. They're a cat adoption agency that's located in Verona. The one that I've worked with more frequently, and I'm still currently working with, is called Newbridge Madison. It's a coalition of the senior centers in Madison, Monona. And before COVID, we were doing sit-down meals, and I was in their nutrition program there. Now I'm helping to hand out prepackaged meals to senior drivers or their proxies.
Thank you.
Yes, Bill.
Hi. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your little talk.
Are you on, Bill?
Nope, thank you. Congratulate you on your what you shared with us. Those are pretty in-depth and deep comments that you had, and I appreciate you doing that with us. It helps us understand a little bit more about a program that we really believe in, that it's working. So from that standpoint, the only question I would like to have of the two of you, one was Madison. I'm sorry, Catherine, I didn't catch where you were from.
I'm from Boyd, Wisconsin, near Eau Claire, Chippewa Falls.
Oh, okay, thank you. Do either of you feel that you're missing out with friends and stuff like that, or have you been able to establish enough social stuff? Catherine, you can go first.
I stay pretty involved with my church, and I'm also in 4-H. So I have friends in 4-H, and I'm one of the main youth leaders kind of at my church, so.
Well, thank you. And Heather?
I've maintained a lot of friendships from previous schools I've been to. Until this year, honestly, the social aspect of eAchieve was its weakest point. But there's a website called eLounge that students can join once they're 13, and there's also a student-moderated Discord server. And that has allowed me to form a lot more connections with people not only in my grade, but in other grades. It's actually also been really helpful for homework, because there's people in the same classes or higher level classes. So if I have a math question, maybe someone in calculus who's already been through this material can help me too. And I don't have to rely solely on my teacher.
Thank you very much for sharing that, both of you. I appreciate it, because we need to hear things like that and understand what's going on. Thank you.
Yeah, Corey.
Thank you. Catherine and Heather, the best part of this job is always hearing from students, so thanks for being here, and thank you to your principal. I'm always trying to listen very carefully when students speak and trying to figure out, at least in my opinion, one of the most important things they said, and you both said some very wonderful things. But you, Catherine, you mentioned that you've learned the importance of asking questions, which is fantastic. And I'm sorry, how old are you? I don't know if she heard about
What was that?
How old are you?
I'm 18.
Okay, well, fantastic, and best wishes pursuing being a park ranger. But continue to ask questions.
Thank you.
I think what you probably already learned is the most important question you can ever ask is why. Keep asking why, keep asking the questions. You're going to continue to be wonderfully successful. But Heather, you mentioned among your very nice things too, that you were able through eAchieve and your experience with the other schools to learn how you best learn, which is great. Again, take that forward when you're at UW-Madison. Congratulations on getting into that school. It's very hard to get into, so I'm sure you'll do wonderful. So thank you to you both.
Yes, Amanda.
Yes, thank you. Hello, ladies. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. Congratulations on what you've been able to accomplish thus far. But Catherine, specifically to you, I always find it very exciting to find others who know who A.C. Virtueson is. I, too, went through homeschooling and did PACE work, so I find very few folks up here who do it, so nice to meet you.
Kurt, did you have any question? You're over my left shoulder, so I'm hard to see you sometimes, Kurt. No? Okay. All right, I don't know if you ladies know, but before becoming the interim principal, Principal Smith was a teacher for many years, and his area of emphasis was biology. And I'm sure he's going to be happy to know that you guys are continuing careers related to biology, in different ways, but biology is pretty broad. And I'm just kind of interested in, have you been able to take some biology courses and or what were some of the things that influenced you to head down the paths that you both chose to go down? I don't care who goes first. You guys determine that.
Kat,
I guess I can. Due to my medical conditions, I have worked extensively with pharmacists and doctors, and I really like the social aspects and the science-related aspects of pharmacy. And as far as biology coursework at eAchieve, I'm currently in AP Bio, and it's actually my favorite class this year. It's taught by Miss Pamela Schultes, and she is great. The classes tend to run long, but they're very informative. She's great with responding to emails and having supportive resources, so we're not just relying on the textbook. There's virtual videos, and there's like study guides. There's students who have gone through this before and other teachers teaching. She works through the AP College Board website too to help with some of their provided resources for the exam, and it's been a wonderful experience this year. I am loving it.
Catherine?
I took biology my freshman year, and I didn't really enjoy it, and I didn't really do the best in it, but I actually enjoyed chemistry, and right now I'm in environmental science with the same teacher that Heather talked about, and yeah, she really goes in depth with her stuff, and I've learned probably the most out of that class than any of my other classes.
Okay, thank you. I do have one more question. You both were in eAchieve last year and this year. And just kind of curious, we had a pretty high increase in enrollment from last year to this year. And just curious, have you noticed anything that's different, or are things pretty much the same, or any observations I would be interested in hearing from you? Since Heather went first last time, maybe Catherine first this time.
When shutdown happened, we didn't really have any change, and the only change that actually happened closer to the end of the school year was that some of our coursework was eliminated to give us a break and kind of reboot ourselves from everything that was going on in the outside world, outside of school. So that was helpful. And again, this year, the same thing is happening where we don't have as much schoolwork, so that we can stay positive and not have the stress of schoolwork with all the outside world.
Okay, Heather?
Specifically with the increase in enrollment, I've noticed two things. The first one being some teachers seem kind of overwhelmed. So one great example is my Spanish teacher. Last year, I had the same teacher. I was in Spanish 2 and this year I'm in Spanish 3. We had classes where 3 or 4 kids would come to the live e-session. So for those kids who chose to come, it was a really in-depth experience. We each got individualized speaking practice. We went through practice problems on top of doing the notes for that week. This year, there's like 25-ish kids in each live e-session. So we don't have as much time for every kid to go through the individualized speaking. We can do some practice problems, but they're more limited. It's much more heavily focused on the notes for the week and then any questions about that material people have. And then just because of the number of students, there's just not as much time to do all the extra enrichment. And I have noticed that with similar things like emails, some teachers will just be slower to respond than they were last year. Grades can sometimes take longer to come out. One benefit that is actually come out of it is Miss Damres in the middle school started a mentorship program. So I'm actually currently a mentor for an 8th grade student, and it's a little bit of a struggle at times. He is not really used to online learning, and the self-motivation it takes is a little bit difficult for him. But working with his parents and working with him, I can see progress, and he really wants to succeed. And it's also really nice to be able to help out and connect with another eAchieve student. So I guess those are the 2 biggest differences just based on the enrollment difference we've had this year.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from board members? Yes.
Comment for Jason. You got 2 really sharp people there. I'm sure you know that.
Amazing.
But
yes.
Also, I really respect what they've shared with us, because there's stuff we need to know.
Mm-hmm.
and they got into that. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you, Jason, and thank you, ladies.
Yep.
Anybody else? Jason, anything?
I just want to say thanks to the board for all of your support and to the executive cabinet for all of your support this year. Obviously a challenging year, and we're trying to provide some level of normalcy in a non-normal year, but we thank you for all of your support, and we'll keep doing the best we can for students like Kat and Heather, so thank you.
Appreciate that. Heather or Catherine? Or how about Catherine? Anything else to say?
Just thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. Heather?
Just same as Catherine, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for the face mask.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. I still have my wife's face mask on, the one she made. Not hers, but the one she made for me. All right, thank you for that. And now we're at the section of our meeting where we have an opportunity for our citizens to address the board. As has been past practice, each individual will be limited in the speaking time. We typically give 3 minutes. I'm going to shorten that a little bit tonight because of the number of speakers that we have. Normally, we allot 30 minutes to have our citizens address us. I'm going to double that time to an hour, but in order to do that, I have to shorten the 3-minute portion to 2 minutes and 45 seconds. That's a little bit trickier than in the past. Amanda, you set for that?
Set.
2 minutes and 45 seconds is what we will allow tonight. So at the 2-minute and 15-second period, when that hits, Amanda will give you a warning or a signal saying 30 seconds, and if you would wrap up in that 30 seconds, we would truly appreciate it. We ask all speakers to honor the time limit, refrain from using any inappropriate language in any manner, and be respectful in their comments. Speakers who do not meet these expectations may be prohibited from speaking at future Board of Education meetings. We also expect that the audience will be respectful of the speaker and of the Board of Education, and refrain from responding with verbal comments, cheering, applause, or other behavior that will detract from the meeting. And also, in order to respect our speakers and meeting participants, if our meeting participants would just silence your phones, we would appreciate that. And we do have a total of 23 speakers that have signed up tonight. And what I'll do is I will call your name, and then I'll also say who's going to be next. I'm going to apologize in advance if I don't pronounce your name properly, but hopefully I'll do a good enough job so you know that you need to come forward, and please say your name correctly if I didn't say it correctly. Chris Bauman will be up first, followed by Clint Wenninger.
Don't start yet till I start talking. Okay, can you hear me or not? Or do I have to get close? Okay. I really like the students you had last time. It shows that, eAchieve Academy, those ladies are doing wonderfully. But we know that that kind of education doesn't work for everyone. And that's why I came out tonight. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm really concerned about the social and emotional well-being of our kids. We need to open our schools 5 days a week for face-to-face learning at all levels. I'm also concerned about our academic performance. 2018-2019 school report card for Waukesha North and Waukesha South, you are not meeting expectations. We need to open our schools full-time with face-to-face learning. Also, from this chart, you can see all of the school districts that have been open all year. One that's not on there is Elmbrook. They've been open. Why aren't we open? I'll tell you why we're not open. These schools have different unions. We have a problem here, people. As a board, I'm asking you to listen to the parents, the students. We need our schools open 5 days a week for face-to-face learning. And finally, I have to say this. On your own webpage, you have your philosophy. We're supposed to bring our aspirations and concerns to you. Well, I have an aspiration that our schools are going to be open 5 days a week for face-to-face learning. I have a concern about the social and emotional well-being of our children. I have a concern about our academics. Whoever said that was totally inappropriate. Here's the deal. You guys are not responding to the concerns of the many parents that have come in front of you. It's time. All you parents out there, there's an election, April. You need to vote for Kelly Piasek or Anthony Zanoviva for school board, because this school board is not responding to your needs.
Chris, I appreciate that. I would like to bring up something that is very important that I haven't really emphasized much over the course of the years. When you speak during the citizen commentary, our policy states that you should address the chairperson, and I would appreciate it if you would follow that, please. So Clint, and then followed by Stephanie Schrader.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight again. My family and I continue to support a return to full-time face-to-face instruction 5 days a week. We do not support the hybrid or full virtual plans. The data shows it is failing our children. We would like to thank the minority of the board members who keep fighting hard in support of getting our children back in school full-time face-to-face. It has been over 300 days since the school district of Waukesha has offered a full education opportunity to a good portion of its students. It's sad that parents have to feel fortunate and appreciative that at least our children get to go to school 2 days a week. The chair of the T&L committee made the comment at a recent meeting that he appreciates taking the emotion out of the debate and discussion. When you choose to ignore the science, the facts, or the truth that the full-time school is indeed safe and in the best interest of our children, then yes, all you leave us with is emotional arguments. We are fighting for the health, welfare, and future of our children, so yes, people will get emotional. However, we still have the truth on our side. For example, truth. The at-risk population are not the people in our schools, whether student or staff. Truth. Being out of school is more detrimental to the health and well-being of our children. Truth. Students and parents want to be back in school. At the December T&L meeting, it was stated that only 5% of secondary students have chosen the all-virtual option. That means 95% want to be in school. And many of those that are on virtual are probably athletes that don't want to get quarantined. Truth. The board has already approved full-time face-to-face instruction, but only for half of its students. Why do the elementary students get this opportunity, but not our secondary students? Truth. The school board is discriminating against my child and all the other students that aren't given the opportunity to be in school solely by their age. On your homepage, non-discrimination statement, School District of Waukesha does not discriminate in its admissions, programs, activities, services, or employment on the basis of sex, age, race, or others. Truth. Other districts surrounding us can offer full-time face-to-face schooling and be successful at it. So I'm asking, why can't we? The virus doesn't know an imaginary line on a map. The argument has been made by one board member that our district is different. No. The only reason our district is different is because of our attitude. Our attitude, position, and desire to not let our students back in school full-time. You control the ability to get our students back into school full-time. You, the board. I have heard all of you state that you want our children back to school. Well, actions speak louder than words, and so far that action has been to keep our children out of the schools. Get our children back in school.
Thank you, Clint.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Stephanie Schrader, followed by Rebecca Flaherty. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi. Got to be able to see. These are statements from a local professional counselor who has left her name off, but I can share with you privately if needed, and also a school district teacher. Dear School Board, as a counselor and licensed professional for over 20 years, I have had the privilege of working with teenagers in private practice and 10 years at Aurora Psych Hospital on the child and adolescent inpatient unit, where I have counseled hundreds of depressed, suicidal, and anxious kids over the last 20 years. It is in my professional opinion, we strive to move towards immediate in-person school for our kids. Some have argued virtual is the same as a traditional homeschool avenue of learning. However, traditional homeschooling allows children in this setting to have outings, social interactions that are virtual just does not allow. We were created to be relational, and there is a detrimental consequence to remaining virtual. Over the last 9 months, there has been a significant increase in my own practice with depression and anxiety, especially amongst teenagers. While virtual learning may be appropriate for some students, overall it has been perpetuated more depressive and anxiety symptoms to include anxiety attacks, isolation, lack of structure, decreased motivation, becoming withdrawn, and significant drop in academic performance. A strong concern is that increased depression and anxiety will lead to increased self-harm and suicidal thoughts. In my observation, science has proven that the younger age range is not as affected by COVID as other adults and those with comorbid diagnosis and conditions. Leading to my professional opinion, we are at a critical point and we are at a significant crossroads of inviting more depression and anxiety if we do not address this issue. Again, in my professional opinion, we need to strive to get our kids back in school. Sincerely, licensed professional counselor in the Milwaukee area. Dear members of the School District of Waukesha Board, I have been a substitute teacher both in the public and private schools for 18 years. I am currently in a long-term sub position which began in September with an indefinite end date. I am teaching face-to-face 5 days a week. The safety protocols I have followed the past 5 months have proven to be successful. Children are engaged and learning, socializing, and succeeding. They are happy and thriving. I am concerned about the children who are not face-to-face, not interacting with their peers and teachers. The isolation and lack of motivation to complete assignments is bringing our children down, not only mentally, but
30
physically
seconds.
and emotionally. Our children need to be in school. Not having our children face-to-face is not helping them reach educational goals and expectations. Lowering standards or not having standards will forever affect our children. Considering we already had substandard testing scores prior to COVID-19, we are not in a position to further degrade our children's learning. Another troubling concern is the union pressures and why some teachers are afraid to speak up. Our teachers are valuable and any intimidation by the union is uncalled for. Please listen to the tax-paying.
Thank you, Stephanie. Rebecca, followed by Kristen Gable. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Flaherty. I have 2 girls at Waukesha West, so my focus tonight is the secondary schools. I'm not here tonight because of COVID. I'm here tonight because of how you handled it. Last summer, you voted to open our schools for 5-day face-to-face instruction. Then at the last minute, too late for any of us to leave the district or send our kids to CMH, you took away that option. You asked people what they wanted. They told you, and then you took it away. You assumed you knew better. You said you knew better than parents. And in doing so, you failed the families, you failed the teachers, you failed the community, but most importantly, you failed our students. Since then, you continue to fail us. You use fear, shame, bullying, old data, and false predictions to push your agendas. You are literally experimenting with my child's lives and the child of the parents in the room next door because you are afraid to make informed decisions. In a year where we need to come together, your decisions divided us. You stirred up so much anger within the district when all you needed to do was stick with your original decision and open schools. We should have been spending the past 5 months working on strategies to keep our children in school, keep our teachers safe, and bettering the education for our children. Instead, these months were wasted, and we are now a broken, divided district. Our children's education and their physical and mental health has suffered. Parents are angry. Some have given up. Worst of all, teachers are caught in the middle. Students are bullying other students. Teachers, children are bullying students. If we had different people at this table, people who truly represent the community and families of our district, the current situation would be significantly better for all. Board members and district leaders would be working together with the county to change quarantines and keep healthy kids in school. And we'd all be carefully watching student outcomes, academic performance, and mental health needs. I pray tonight that each of you puts the children first. Please stop stoking fear. Give every student in the district, regardless of age or ability, the opportunity for a 5-day face-to-face instruction. Please do everything humanly possible to keep those that wish to return to the classroom in the classroom. Let's get our teachers back face-to-face with the children every day so they can rebuild those relationships and assess how to make up for the education loss and do what they do best, teach from the classroom. It's time to heal our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Kristen, followed by Kemper Emmerich. Kemper Emmerich?
Good evening. I'm here tonight to say that our time is up. We need to go back to 5 days a week, face-to-face, while keeping the amount of students unnecessarily quarantined under control. We can no longer ignore the data. We've had almost a full semester with our hybrid model that includes excessive quarantines, and the data recently obtained from an Opens Records request was provided by the School District of Waukesha demonstrates this impact. The following data is available at the Wisconsin Achievement Partnership Facebook page, and the data is extremely alarming. Again, this came directly from the School District of Waukesha. Overall, in our Waukesha high schools, the Q1 progress data shows that more than 23% of our students are failing at least one class. The same Q1 data from last year shows that was only 6.5. This represents a 261% increase in the number of students failing at least one class, year over 1 year. Our kids don't get this time back. While we are trying to make a broken system work, schools around the country are safely back in school 5 days a week, face-to-face. It's just not the same. It's just not the kids that are currently failing a class that are suffering. They all are. Additionally, our high school students' average GPA has seen an 11% drop from last year to this year, School District of Waukesha data. One increase we saw in these numbers was the amount of dropped AP classes. Our Waukesha High School saw an 18% increase in the number of dropped AP classes this year over last year. Now, kids are competing nationally for scholarship, elite positions in special college programs, athletic scholarships, and these numbers are hurting our kids. This model puts them behind. I'd like to conclude with the issue of quarantines. Our kids will be no better off going back 5 days a week, face-to-face, if we continue with the current rate of quarantining. Keeping healthy kids home for weeks on end doesn't make sense, and it is a huge disruption to the learning process. In our district, 52% of people have been quarantined for 2 weeks or longer, but only 1% of those quarantines turn into isolation. That's 321 students that were quarantined and were not COVID positive. That's too many students missing too much school unnecessarily. Elected officials from around the Midwest have already adjusted quarantine guidelines. We need to adjust it so that people that are exposed, but when both people are wearing a mask, they are not required to quarantine. This is what the data is suggesting now. We need to pay attention to these numbers. Thank you.
Kemper, followed by Kurt Burry. Hi, Kemper.
Hi. Hi, my name is Kemper. I go to Butler Middle School, and I am a 6th grader. I am in Quest. I am here tonight on the behalf of my brothers and my peers. You see, I have a 504 plan. That means I can attend in-person school for 4 days a week. Unfortunately, my brothers and my peers only attend school 2 days a week. I know when I come home, I often see my brothers sad and depressed because they miss their friends and schoolwork is hard for them virtually. They normally aren't like this. They are usually happy and they work hard. The past 2 months have been very hard for them. I feel that we deserve to go back 4 days a week for everyone because we are maintaining social distancing, sanitizing, and wearing masks. Please consider voting yes for all of us to go back 4 or 5 days a week. I know my brothers and my peers would be forever thankful. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Kemper. Kurt, followed by Stacy Keene. Hi, Kurt.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Burry, and I have 4 school-age children. I'm here to speak in favor of 5-day face-to-face learning. I got 2 points I want to talk about. First, I keep hearing about how Waukesha is the largest school district in the state to try to attempt a 5-day face-to-face learning. I got a couple questions about that. The comment must be referred to our high school and middle school, since our elementary schools have been 5-day face-to-face in-class learning all school year. Our high schools and middle schools are no larger than our neighboring school districts, and in fact, in many cases, they're smaller. Sussex Hamilton High School, 1,400 students. Muskego, Mugwanago, 1,600 students. Heartland Arrowhead High School has over 2,200 students. The average student size for our 3 high schools is around 1,100. And it can't be because Waukesha is a larger city. Look at Catholic Memorial High School, which is obviously in the city of Waukesha. They have been 5-day face-to-face with the exception of a couple weeks in November for the entire school year. How are they able to do it? Is it mindset? Is it attitude? Every community around Waukesha is 5-day face-to-face. Brookfield Central is 9 miles from Waukesha South High School, yet they're face-to-face. What is different between them and us? Second point, quarantine rules in the schools where masks are being worn. Too strict. Quarantine students and staff members for 10 to 14 days because they're within the 6 feet, between 6 feet of someone when they're both wearing a mask is an overreaction. We may not have known that in the spring, but we know it now. Other areas are realizing this and adjusting to the no quarantine if masks are worn, which is obviously what the schools are doing. At last count, 7 states have already adjusted their rules for schools, and I'm sure that list is going to grow. Every study is showing you that when masks are worn and one individual tests positive for COVID and the other individual is within that proximity, they're not going to catch it.
30 seconds.
Other areas are, however, I'm seeing that this issue is getting tossed around between the local and county and state levels. No one wants to take responsibility. Less than 1% of the students and staff in the school district of Waukesha that are quarantined actually go on to test positive during that quarantine as a probable result of the close contact at the school. Does that mean that less than 1% really legitimizes quarantining thousands of students and staff, sometimes multiple times?
Time.
I know you've been sent the information. Make a reasoned approach and vote for 5-day face-to-face. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Stacy, followed by Mike Walsh. Hi, Stacy.
Hi. Good evening. First, I want to thank the board members who have supported the kids going back. And I want to start by saying the district charged $531 for information that you should have been using to guide your decisions. A large group of parents were so outraged at this that they chipped in to help a parent pay for this ridiculous charge. Well, we got it today. It would have been in your best interest to keep it a secret. To say we were shocked and appalled today when it came to light is an understatement. Each of you who voted to be all virtual and then again continue hybrid should be ashamed and embarrassed at what you have done. You all claim to be doing what is best for our children and that they are fine. I have even heard from a board member that this is making the kids more resilient. However, the numbers do not lie. You harm them in ways that will be long-lasting, and you are 100% responsible. The parents have compiled a list of suggestions for you tonight, and Mr. Como, this is probably what you need to make sure happens tonight. Keep your comments short and relevant. No predictions or scare tactics. No stories about contact tracing at Sturgis Bike Rally or the Space Shuttle. Keep it to district data we expect you have in front of you. There are a lot of parents and students watching tonight, and we do not need another 5-hour meeting where one of you speaks for almost 2 hours of that time. I personally sent an email requesting you all be prepared tonight. The children you are elected to represent are counting on you. You have all been sent data, studies, and a wealth of information. We expect to see evidence tonight that you have actually informed yourself as to what is happening to our very district. Next, please do not say, we already tried it, it didn't work. Find a way to make it work. Frankly, we are all sick and tired of hearing that. Figure out the excessive quarantines and make it work. please have a discussion about the inexcusable and very sad increase in failing grades and huge drops in GPAs in every school. You better have it and be ready to justify how you are negatively affecting our children. We ask that you use science and district data to make your decision tonight, not fear-mongering. Again, real data, not predictions and guesses. We expect your discussion tonight will be as requested. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Mike, followed by David Wad. Hello, Mike.
How you doing? See all these pins there? Maybe I can use one on the board. Hate to see them go to waste. Thank you, everyone. My name is Mike Walsh. Happy to be here tonight and address the board, and never been inside this room. Always go to City Hall. That's where I've focused most of my time in the past. So if we're to, I'm not going to go through the same data all the other parents do. I kind of look at things differently. And, you know, I guess right now we're in a pandemic where, you know, we need to do the right things, we need to social distance, and we need to protect ourselves, and we need to protect our kids, right? So 10% of our population in the state of Wisconsin has now tested positive for the virus in 12 months. So if we're going to continue down the same path, third graders will be virtual learning through the system we're doing through senior year. Okay, so we need to get the kids back to 5-day. If you look at this room that we're in right now, this is not a room of safety. So now Fox 6 was outside when we had the parents out there with the signs and saying, you know, that we want to be open 5 days. And I guarantee you there'll be people at home that'll be saying, super spreader. But we come inside this room, and I'm looking around the room, and I'm looking at the ages of the group, and many of you guys are at-risk population. Yet you're not 6 feet apart for most of the time, and you don't have plastic dividers. I need to address you guys this way, is what you're asking for, but the plastic divider is here, right? So this is really just a smokescreen of nothing. So my son is in tech ed. Tech ed is a hands-on education. Okay, what can you be doing with tech ed? You can have tech ed kids building plastic screens for teachers that don't feel safe. You can actually have the kids building dividers for you guys. So there's different opportunities that you guys can actually do to employ the kids and give them some real world training, right? But right now, they're not learning crap at home. Sorry for using the word crap. So, I mean, my son was actually a student of the month in February for tech ed, not for much else. But now the kid's doing terrible, okay? He's not like other kids. Well, actually is like other kids. You know, unfortunately, you had the kids that came on the screen tonight who are virtual learners. Now they're struggling because they're not getting the attention. The teachers teach in school the best way. That's really the place that they need to be. You guys, you know, maybe you didn't know, but the ultimate disrespect was a resident getting charged $531 to get the data that you guys need to do. You know, she actually brought out the data, and it shows that our kids are failing 5 times greater than they were before. I got to talk to Mr. O'Brien for the last 2 days, and he says that if Dr. Siebert brings forward that he's going to go 5 days in person, that he will vote it and he will support it. And I hope you guys do and follow just like he said he's willing to do. And I hope you bring it out tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. David, followed by Anna Marie Erdman. David.
Good evening. So I had a guest opinion published in the Freeman today. So if you're interested in my really detailed opinions on the matters of quarantine and face-to-face, you can read them there, and I hope you will. So instead, I'm going to use my time because I came across information today that is extremely disturbing, and there are questions that need to be asked of everyone in this room. I want to know how many of you knew before today that, as just mentioned, we are at a 5 times higher rate of at least one student failing in almost every high school in our district than a year ago. How many in this room knew that before today? And the next question I would ask is, if you didn't know it, why not? How is that information something that the public is just finding out today? If there are people in this room that didn't bother to ask that, you need to start asking yourself what you're doing in this room, because the decisions that are being made are having dramatic impacts on children like my daughter, who sits in that room behind me, and she wanted to come tonight because she's keeping track. She wants to know who's fighting for her. She wants to know who's voting for her. And she wants to know who's coming in here to fight against her and who's going to vote against her. She's suffering all the stuff you're hearing about. We heard from a therapist, other parents. We need to get this situation fixed, and we need to get it fixed now. We parents kept telling you in survey after survey after survey, our kids need to be in school 5 days a week, face to face. And instead, you keep foisting on us a hybrid model that is a disaster. There are people in this room who actually had the gall to say it works just as well as anything else. Waukesha North, freshman class, where my daughter is a student, 388% increase in students that are failing a class. GPAs are down double digits. Every single high school and every single class in every single high school has seen at least a 7% reduction. You all have one responsibility. You are a board of education. Your responsibility is to educate our kids. Educate them. Stop with the platitudes. Stop with the politics. Vote to get our kids back into school and start fixing this mess that it took the parents the time and money to dig out.
Thank you, David. Anna Maria, followed by Michelle Cameron.
Hi, Anna Marie Erdman. Sorry, just a little choked up. That was a father that is really passionate about his daughter, and she was in there choked up about it, so I'm sorry. So I'm here for the students of the middle schools and high schools to go back to FACE. My son is a 6th grader at Les Paul this year. He needs to go back full-time. Thousands of kids need to go back full-time. And reading numerous articles over the past few months, the harm that we are causing our children by staying home is unforgivable. Besides losing education, there are other major concerns for our students: lack of exercise, stress, anxiety, loss of social interaction, social isolation, abuse, depression, and hunger. These factors will have negative effects on our children's lives and academic performance now and in the coming future. And numbers that come out today provided from you, the students are failing classes, CPAs are dropping, and attendance is dropping. The hybrid impact on our children is unacceptable. The numbers are not showing this virus is spreading within schools. I believe the mitigation measures that our schools are taking to keep all of our kids safe are working. I work at Rose Glen, and I see firsthand all the precautions every staff member, as well as all of our students, are doing to keep everyone safe. I would assume that this is how all of the schools in Waukesha are doing it. The students at my school are following all the guidelines that have been given to them, and I believe if our grade school kids can handle this, the secondary level kids can too. Dr. Fauci has stated that the, quote, default position should be to try best possible within reason to keep their children in school or get them back to school. He has stated in the data the spread among children and from children is not big at all. You as a school board should prioritize what's best for our children, not what is best for the unions or business interests. And according to Dr. Fauci and other health experts, that means opening schools for in-person classes sooner than later. Please have our secondary students go back face-to-face 5 days as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Marie. Michelle, followed by Joseph Lyman. Hi, Michelle.
Hello. I didn't write anything. What I speak about is something I live every day. I'm a pediatric nurse. I have a junior at Waukesha West, and I'm looking into the eyes of these teenagers every single day. The teenagers who have increased anxiety and depression. My own son, 16 years old, now anxiety and depression. He's an A student, AP classes, has high aspirations. He is giving up. He watched the meeting back in the summer with high hopes, he stayed up late, wanted to hear it. When he found out I was coming here, he had dashed hopes. He's lost hope. He spends the majority of the time in his bedroom, alone. He's not the type of child who should be in a bedroom alone. The majority of these children I'm seeing with anxiety and depression need the social interaction. They need to be with their peers. They're lacking the education that they need, the emotional, mental, and social welfare of them is really, I'm seeing it every day. I'm seeing it in pediatrics. So I'm really begging you, please get our children back into school. It's in their best interest on multiple levels, and I just appreciate the time being able to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Joseph, followed by Kelly Piacek.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, thank you so much for affording me the opportunity to speak tonight. In 1787, Grigory Potemkin of Crimea erected phony settlements along the banks of the Dnieper River in order to impress Emperor Catherine II of Russia. His strategy was simple. As the ship floated down the river, he wanted to trick her into thinking that his country was faring far better than it was. Directly following the August board meeting, I emailed each of you to ask how the board would measure the effectiveness of the hybrid model teaching experience. Specifically, I asked what milestones would be set for the superintendent and administrators to ensure students would be provided a quality education. After all, what can be measured can be improved. Unfortunately, I only received responses from a few of you. Recently, I received a variety of data provided by the school district of Waukesha from an open records request. The data is shocking. Comparing grade point averages for the 2021 academic year to the same period a year ago, grade point averages at every grade at every high school in the district have decreased, some dramatically. However, more alarming is the percentage of students failing at least one class at the high school level in the district. The following data is extremely concerning. 28% of 11th graders and 22% of 12th graders attending West High School are failing at least one class. 31% of 11th graders and 32% of 9th graders attending North High School are failing at least one class. Nearly 43% of 9th graders and 48% of 11th graders attending South High School are failing at least one class. I have heard board members recently, at recent board meetings boast, the hybrid model is effective as face-to-face learning. Unfortunately, the numbers do not support this. It is time to tear down the facade that the school district is faring far better than it actually is. The metrics and key performance indicators illustrate that it is time to provide parents with the choice to send their children to school face-to-face 5 days a week to ensure kids receive a quality education. After all, the purpose of the board is to provide a free and quality education to all students in the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Kelly, followed by Kennedy Freiberg. Hi, Kelly.
Hi there. Tonight, Mr. Como, I do want to talk to you about accountability. I'm not going to repeat the data that has already been presented. I've been speaking to this board for over 3 years, the last 6 months pretty frequently, and I've, for the last 6 months, been asking you to think about outcomes and achievement. And several of you have actually told me that now is not the time to talk about achievement because there are other more important things. So when is the time? You've heard all the data that the parents have uncovered. I think it's unfortunate that it's had to been revealed that way. First of all, I think our parents and our community members have done an excellent job of presenting tonight. I know how much courage it takes to get up here and speak for your family. There's a lot of emotion in the other room. So I want to talk about two things. First is the other room. I've approached you before about this. This is not working. You're all sitting at the table together, and I have to stand behind this piece of plastic. There are 4 police officers in the hallway. What did you think was going to happen tonight? You have a bunch of passionate, concerned parents here fighting for their children, and you don't have the ability to offer them compassion, access, transparency. This isn't the way it's supposed to work. And then there's the achievement piece. I think we've gotten to the point where it's now an emergency, and it troubles me greatly. In fact, it blows my mind that we have time to schedule a meeting to have a community hearing to talk about waivers of educational effectiveness, but we don't have the time to actually talk about student achievement. And that's not what this board is responsible for. Let's stop working on finding excuses for underperforming and start actually delivering for our kids who need us. You know it's safe for these kids to be in the classroom 5 days a week, face-to-face. You know it's safe for those teachers who are about to come in here and tell you that it's not. When I came and spoke about waivers last December, I was the only person in the community who spoke out against waivers. And I think most of you know by now that while I was speaking, Ellie McHenry, the head of the teachers union, shouted in the other room for me to shut up, because parents don't have a right to tell teachers what to do. That's not okay. Put the children first. Listen to the parents who are pleading with you and make the right decision.
Thank you, Kelly. Kennedy, followed by Quinn Freiberg. Hi, Kennedy. Welcome. Yeah, could someone help her with that?
Hi, my name is Kennedy. I am 7 years old in second grade. I do virtual school. I have a great family that loves me. They want to protect me or family, but also want me to see my friends. I thought some kids like me might want to go to school, but to feel safe, maybe we could have hybrid for elementary already too. I like virtual school, but I want like hybrid so I could see some of my friends and keep my family safe. Thank you. I hope you like my idea.
Thank you, Kennedy. Quinn, followed by Eric Wiersba, I think.
Hello, my name is Quinn Freiberg. I go to Horning and I'm in the flight program. Thank you for having me today. Today I'm here to talk to you about hybrid and secondary schooling. One thing to consider is the virus. When my school went 4 days a week, we had to shut down within almost 2 weeks because of all the exposures. I know over 10 people who got COVID-19 and I don't want to get the virus anytime soon. When we were 4 days, the classrooms were packed and it was making it hard for social distancing. Having a balance has helped me a lot within the past year. I'm able to work in a comfortable work environment and work alone and sometimes. When I'm at school, I get to see friends and teachers and have human contact and collaborate with friends. One of my classmates has told me that we should keep the hybrid model because it's a good balance between being at home and being at school. With being home, you're able to be alone and have work at your own speed. You have a teacher contact and get to see other students when you're at school. I'm personally in a higher level class and my grades have actually gone up during virtual schooling because of being able to be on my own. I know lots of people don't have the same experiences as me, but right now in the pandemic, I think it's important to stay in the hybrid model. The hybrid has something for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Quinn. Eric, followed by Stephen Matson. Hi, Eric.
Hi there. Good job on the name. Good evening. I wanted to share with all of you the different school experiences of my two sons. I have a fourth grader, Ian, who's at Summit View, and a freshman, Caleb, at West. The fourth grader is in person 5 days face-to-face, while we know the freshman's in hybrid. Ian is thriving. He's doing great in school, he loves his teachers, and is generally a happy, upbeat kid. Caleb, however, is a different story. Pre-COVID, he was my glass-half-full, fun-loving, positive, easygoing kid. He's a smart, dedicated student athlete. But now he's different. He does not have the same pep in his step. He's struggling with 5 AP or AP prep classes in Spanish 2. He's frustrated. Technology sucks. It's glitchy, and with hybrid, when they're actually in class, instead of 6 classes a day, they have 8. That leaves less time in class with each teacher and more homework and stress. And then to top it all off, he got quarantined as a perfectly healthy kid and had to miss his last football game of the season. He has by far been happiest when he's been face-to-face. So my question to you is, why? Why does my fourth grader deserve a better education than my freshmen? Why does Ian get 20 days a month in class and Caleb gets 8? 8! How can you think that's enough? It's a joke. I mean, when the CDC says that school is the safest place can be, why don't you listen? When study after study shows the adverse effects to kids' mental health, why aren't you listening? Since March, the COVID survival rate for kids and adults 0 to 29 in Wisconsin is 100%. And adults 30 to 59 make up only 6% of fatalities. Statewide infection and hospitalization rates are back down to where they were in July. Everything points to schools being a really safe place to be. We need to get the kids back in school now, and we need to change how we quarantine. As of December 18th, less than 1% of student quarantines turned into isolation from close contact, and only 2 teachers claim to have been infected by students. So if the transmission rate in schools is very small, how many less kids would have been quarantined if we would have changed the distance from, say, 6 to 4 feet if they were both wearing masks?
30
Do you know?
seconds.
If you don't know, why not? Why aren't we asking these questions? Because let's be real honest, it's not sick kids and teachers that are shutting down schools, it's quarantines. As the surrounding schools in Waukesha County continue to successfully teach in person, our older students fall further and further behind. My freshman has gone from an A student to a B student due to no fault of his own. It's going to affect what college he gets accepted into. We need to stop believing that our littles deserve to be in school 5 days and our older kids should be doing the same.
Time.
Thank you.
Eric. Stephen, followed by Judith Emerson. Hi, Stephen.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Stephen Matson, and I am a band director at West High School. I'm here to speak tonight because of our shared belief in educational equity, which is, of course, a core value of this district. It is my assertion that a transition to full in-person learning for secondary schools is far less equitable than our current hybrid model and thus should not be undertaken at this time. When we transitioned from hybrid to full in-person learning in October, hundreds of students throughout the district elected to leave school and learn virtually. This was not a decision that these students were at all happy to make, as it meant abandoning their friends, their teachers, and their best chance for a quality education. Rather, it was one they were forced into making, as the dramatically increased rate of COVID exposure in the full in-person model rendered the alternative unacceptable. I'm sure you would agree that these students and families cannot be faulted for such a decision, especially knowing how that October transition played out. However, if this board approves another transition to full in-person learning, these students will again be forced by the circumstances to leave their teachers and friends and to go home against their will, having to choose a second-rate education for the purposes of their family's health and safety. And it is second-rate. I will be the first to admit that my fully virtual students receive a significantly lower quality of education than my in-person students, and I know of no teacher or student who would say differently. So why then would we want to subject so many more students to this sad and lonely reality? Now, there is an argument to be made that this is the right thing to do, but it is not one rooted in equity. That argument would be saying that the needs of students who would receive a marginally better education fully in person outweigh the needs of those hundreds who would receive a far worse education at home. This is a solely utilitarian argument, and it directly contradicts our district's focus on equity and empowering the greatest number of students to reach their full potential. While hybrid learning certainly has its downsides, it is a far more equitable compromise as it offers so many more students the opportunity to learn in person rather than prioritize the needs of only some. So when you vote tonight, I ask you to please consider these hundreds of students. These students have exciting college and career ambitions and deserve the best opportunity to make them a reality. Many of these students are watching this right now. Will you be the one to send them home? Or will you make a commitment to upholding equity? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stephen. Judith, followed by Michael Gorchek? Gorecki. I'm sorry, Michael Gorecki.
Hello,
Hi, Judith.
My name is Judith Emerson, and thank you for letting me speak tonight. I know you heard from me before, and I wasn't going to speak tonight, but then when my middle schooler heard about this meeting, he asked me to speak up. First, an update on the elementary virtual option. My daughter is doing amazing. The teachers are so engaged, so thank you so much for offering this option. My middle schooler is also doing very well with the hybrid option. It gives him that in-person support he needs, while also us being able to stay safe as a family. I'm asking you to continue these two models until more people are vaccinated, until our numbers go down as a community, and until we know what this new variant of the virus is going to do. We all want to go back to normal, but if you take the hybrid option away, please understand that for my son, you are taking his in-person learning away. Because for my family, it is not safe to have that much exposure to the virus. So please just understand that if you are deciding full face-to-face, you're actually taking face-to-face away from some students. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Judith. Michael? Hey, Mike. Followed by Jackie. Jackie I'm sorry, Jackie. I'm not able to pronounce your name. Michael.
Good evening. Thank you to the board for the opportunity to present tonight.
Mike, do you have
just
a mask?
wanted to.
Mike,
no, I don't have a medical exemption. So thank you.
I'm sorry, Mike.
I have a medical exemption. I'm sorry. I see the board member here indicating with the mask.
All right, Mike.
Just wanted to remind everybody about the solemn responsibility that the school board and that teachers have to, first of all, educate students. I've listened previously to an impassioned band teacher that mentioned that so many teachers acknowledge that the virtual education is inferior. He addressed that. And he made the point, or tried to make the point, about in-person education being inequitable. And I have to ask, what's equitable about an inferior education? What's equitable about spiking suicide and mental health rates among young people? Parents have entrusted, taxpayers have entrusted teachers in this school district to care for our children. It's obvious from the data that's been presented that that's not happening. I'm not questioning anybody's intentions, but you can't argue with the results. The data that's been presented tonight has been damning. It's inexcusable. There's no reason why children cannot return to school face-to-face on a full-time basis when the infection and especially the mortality rates have been essentially flat since the beginning of the pandemic. Before COVID, school districts were already struggling to meet educational goals. Now, the data that's been presented tonight shows that students are falling further and further behind. All the missed opportunities, the social interaction, the sports, the scholarships, the advancement. Society needs each successive generation to enter the workforce prepared to carry those who are exiting. That's not happening. We're going to have a huge gap in our society because of this. The strain on families has increased tremendously, especially those students who come from single-parent families. We heard a young man named Kemper tonight who begged the school board, now granted on behalf of his older brothers, to return to school full-time. When I was in high school, we were trying to get out. Now we've got students who are begging to get in. It was interesting as I sat upstairs in the overflow room watching the previous speakers, almost to a man, everyone begging schools to open full-time.
Thank you, Michael. Please
on the backdrop of people being praised.
Please respect the time.
Praising one another.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
A few extra seconds was taken earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Jackie, and I apologize for not being able to pronounce your last name. Sarah Harrison. How do you say your name, Jackie? I'm sorry.
Oh, hi. Jackie Belchunas. So I'm a parent of two high schoolers, one at West and one at South. And I just wanted to tell you that my one at South, he is not doing well with this. He's ADHD, and he was getting C's, and now he is failing every class. He has given up. He says that there's no use in it because he doesn't understand what they're saying, and he can do it in person, but he can't do it when it's virtual at all. My daughter was getting all A's. Now she's getting B's and C's, and she's having somewhat of a problem too. I'm a college graduate, and I actually looked at her math and how he was teaching it. Honestly, I was lost. I didn't understand a thing of how he was teaching it virtually. It's especially for math. So I am just asking you guys if you could just, realize what us parents are going through with having our children having virtual or hybrid. Mentally, it's not healthy. I feel like my daughter is more depressed, and she doesn't have the interaction of the other kids. And I'm afraid too, my son, who is the ADHD, he is a senior. I'm not even sure if he's going to pass. But, having this education, I'm afraid that they're not going to be ready for college. I mean, they're not learning much. My daughter's like, I haven't really learned that much at all, with this past year. So I know the election's coming up, and I know whoever voted for, whoever was with virtual and hybrid, I really hope that you don't get in, because I'm going to try my hardest. Whoever was for this, face-to-face, full-time, I commend you, and I thank you very much, whoever did that, whoever you guys. I guess I'm done.
Thank you, Jackie.
I should have rehearsed this more. It was kind of like last minute.
Thank you, Jackie. Sarah Harrison, followed by Tristan Watson. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. I would prefer not to speak in front of this. I'll definitely allow for anyone to put it back up if they prefer to speak in front of it. There we go. Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for taking time to hear me speak this evening. We teach our kids to follow scientific principles. We can and we do have differences of opinion, but I come to you tonight with science and facts. I really appreciate that another parent or another citizen brought up the quote from Dr. Fauci. He did indeed say in the December 31st, 2020 issue of the Los Angeles Times that getting children back to school is absolutely important and will be key to getting back to normalcy. He also said that if we are diligent about getting people vaccinated between April and July, he believes by early fall that we can accomplish that. He did not say, open the doors and go in right now. So a little context on that quote. I would like to bring to the attention of the board the CDC Guiding Principles, which is available on cdc.gov, the Guiding Principles for kindergarten through 12th grade schools. There are lowest to highest risk categories. The lowest risk is virtual only. More risk is small in-person classes, activities and events with groups of students and staff in cohorts, which is very similar to what we have today and what we've been experiencing this year at Waukesha. And the highest risk is a full-size in-person class where students are not spaced apart, share classroom materials or supplies, and mix between classes and activities. I'm here to ask you, please do not put my two students in a situation where they're not able to be socially distanced into a situation where we will have to
30
make
seconds.
a decision between them being 100% in person or 100% virtual, because for their health's sake, unfortunately, we will probably be going virtual. That is what we had to do last time when this experiment was tried, and unfortunately, it was not successful. Another thing from the CDC website that I would bring to your attention is their indicators for risk of introduction and transmission of COVID-19 in schools.
Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tristan. Hi, Tristan. Welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to take a moment to thank Diane Voigt, as well as every other member of this board who fought to keep our secondary schools in hybrid back in October. Your efforts have not gone unnoticed by me, and I am indebted to all of you. Thank you very much. Sadly, it was not enough to combat the majority of members who had effectively sacrificed common sense and sided with the man who couldn't wear a mask properly, let alone create a cohesive argument. Let me ask you all some questions. When you saw that the numbers of infected students climbed to a couple hundred per school in a matter of days once we moved back to full face-to-face, what were you expecting? Did you really think that was just a coincidence? Did you honestly think that doubling the student body when social distancing was already incredibly tough would work just fine? And why did you all turn the other cheek when many of your own students and teachers, the ones directly affected by your decisions that do not include the parents, stood right here pleading with you to have a change of heart? Moments like these make me believe that neither I nor my life is valued in this district, the one place where I am meant to be protected, and I am far from alone in that. But here's the catch. You all have an opportunity to redeem yourselves. You have a chance to prove me and many others wrong in our stance that you don't care about us. To all the ill-informed parents and those making your decisions purely due to political motivation, let me reiterate something I said here back in October. Our health and our lives are, and always will be, more important than our education. You're all acting like it's the exact opposite, that we can just ignore this pandemic because our grades are so much more important. And here's another thing. You know how many cases of COVID have been confirmed in Wisconsin as of today? 555,000. 40,300 of those cases are in Waukesha County alone. When I was here back in October, there were 9,352 cases, 9,532. So why are we continuing to act like it's safe to return to large gatherings because of declining new cases? The amount of new cases is waning because hybrid works. Let it work. Now, did I just waste my time? Did I come here pleading to you for nothing? I'll let you be the judge of that. Be better than the peer pressure that is surrounding you all. Listen to common sense and not the desire to return to normalcy for the sake of it, because history has its eyes on all of you. Do you really want to be remembered for intentionally putting your students in danger without even considering how this affects us? Think about that.
Thank you, Tristan. And I had forgot to ask Nola Hennon to be on deck. So you're up now, Nola. Sorry I didn't call you before. We'll give you a moment to get in here.
Hi there. My name is Nola Hennon, and I'm currently a sophomore at Waukesha South. And I may look a little familiar because I was actually at the last school board meeting. And since that meeting, I contracted COVID-19 through another student at my school. Without my knowledge, I gave the virus to multiple students and my entire family. I had a very quick recovery, but my parents did not. My dad has maintained long-lasting symptoms that have permanently set a dent in my father's health. Just as I don't want my family or friends to go through pain, I'm sure you wouldn't want your loved ones to either. I put my friends, peers, and teachers at risk. This goes to show that returning to 4 days a week is not a safe practice. To quote a parent from the last meeting, quote, "We should not live in fear, but we should also not live in ignorance." And finally, in reference to another parent tonight, we need to listen to our students and teachers. As much as we would all love to be in school 5 days a week right now, it is not the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nola. All right, thank you everyone for addressing us this evening. We will be moving on to our minute approval at this time. We do have several minutes for considering to approve. December 9th, 2020, a public hearing. Also on December 9th, we had a regular board meeting. And December 9th, we had an executive session. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Yes?
I move to approve the 3 sets of minutes from December 9th as presented in board docs.
Okay. Thank you, Diane. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Amanda. Any discussion? Okay, Sue, please take the roll call vote.
Corey Montiel.
Aye.
William Baumgart. Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek. Aye. Kurt O'Brien.
Unmute, Kurt. Unmute, Kurt. I think you're saying aye, but we don't hear you. Thumbs up for an aye.
Thumbs up to 3, that's good.
Okay, thank you, Kurt.
Amanda Ratti.
Aye.
Diane Voigt. Aye. Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 8-0.
Thank you, Kurt. Amanda Ratti.
Aye.
Diane Voigt. Aye.
Communications?
Aye.
Passes 8-0. Thank you, Kurt.
Amanda Ratti.
Not sure what the feedback is here.
Communications.
We're getting feedback. Okay. All right, I think that's better. Moving on to the communications part of our meeting. Dr. Siebert, did we have any?
We do. Thank you, Mr. Como. I want to bring to the board's attention that the Wisconsin High School Forensics Association honored each of our 3 high schools, our directors, and students who took part in the 2020 Online State Theater Festival. At Waukesha West High School, they honored Director Nathan Barish, and the cast of the play The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime received the Critics' Choice Award. And we also received the Directing Award, Ensemble Award, Crew Award, and Outstanding Acting for Zach Radabau as Christopher in that production, and Aishu Nagasunder as Judy in that production. That's all from Waukesha West. At Waukesha North, the director honored was Ryan Osloos, and the cast of the play Shakespeare's Villains received the All-State Award for their production commemorating their advancement and participation in that state festival. And at Waukesha South High School, the director is Allison Shambirik, and they were honored for the cast of the play Selfie, which also received the Critics' Choice Award, and the Ensemble Award and Outstanding Acting Award went to Erin Loschman, who played Nicole. So congratulations to those 3 high schools and all of those individuals that I mentioned. Very exciting.
Thank you, Dr. Siebert. Diane, do we happen to have a Waukesha Education Foundation report this month?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Mr. President. First, I wanted to share a special thank you to Dr. Ross Freshwater. He's a South teacher who raised close to $650 by selling face shields and sharing the proceeds with the foundation. WEF has received several notable and unexpected year-end donations totaling over $19,000 for our Waukesha County Community Funds scholarships or to go directly to our foundation. I will not mention each donor, but I want to thank all who donated between $100 and $1,000 and one person even $10,000. I appreciate that these individuals share my passion for the Waukesha Education Foundation and all of the good that is being done for students and staff in the School District of Waukesha through this organization. I want to specifically mention the donations from several School District of Waukesha retirees who chose to have their $100 retirement gift be a donation to Waukesha Education Foundation. WEF wants to sincerely thank them and each of the retirees who missed out on the well-deserved recognitions in spring for their years of service and received a commendation in December. So thank them for their years of service. At the January meeting, WEF welcomed Carlisa Schmidt as our newest addition to the Waukesha Board of Directors. You may have seen her in our recent WEF social media recognitions of all the board members as we publicly thanked each member for their valuable service and actively encourage everyone who might be interested in getting involved to get involved in our activities or committee work. Just let us know if you'd like to be part of the Waukesha Education Foundation family. Thank you to all who have been The first to renew their annual WEF sponsorships at the $1,000 silver level. Thank yous to go out to Davies Orthodontics, Waukesha State Bank, Dr. Shoemaker and Gilson, and Advocate Aurora Healthcare. Next, I have an announcement that could impact all of your lives. I want to announce the Moving Forward Wellness Challenge that WEF is planning for March 27th to April 23rd. School District of Waukesha employees, students, and families and community members, like all of us, will be invited to record our movement minutes as part of the school team. Plan to participate in the Moving Forward Wellness Challenge. It'll be free to participate in, but we're looking right now for sponsors for this wellness event. Stay tuned for more details. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Voigt. It's a good thing I wear a Fitbit, huh?
Exactly. We were talking about those before the meeting. That would come in handy.
Otherwise, recording would be kind of tough. Thank you for your report. Moving on to our charter school and program report given by Mr. Baumgart.
Nothing this month, Mr. Como.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our consent agenda. Mr. Clark, do we have any gifts to present? I see a pretty long list.
This could be a record-setting report, so bear with me here. We've received 17 gifts this month, totaling $31,500. Whittier Elementary School, 5 gifts, a diverse book collection valued at $1,500 from Michael Best Law Firm, handmade bass and winter wear valued at $500 from St. Luke's, books valued at $6,000 from United Way, school supplies, winter wear, and food valued at $1,000 from River Glen Church, and $500 worth of Christmas gifts and from Christmas Clearing Council. All gifts used for students and families in need. South High School received 4 gifts, 40 $50 gift cards for students in need from Heidi and Kurt Bauer, $500 from the Bauers to support staff needs in classrooms, and $500 from the Bauers for the wrestling program. They also received $1,500 from Jessica Haas and Jim Lucas to go towards the baseball program. Hatfield Elementary received a donation of 39 handmade quilts valued at $3,000 to be given to every 5K student to take home. Higher Elementary received $615.78 from Fox River Christian Church to purchase voice amplifiers for higher teaching staff. Les Paul Middle School received $400 from Eric and Katie Hess to help costs of running technology education classes. The Horwitz DeReamer Planetarium received $500 from Flash, Mary Ann, and Dan Gordon to be used towards the planetarium lobby remodel project. They also received $10,000 from Friends of Retzler Nature Center to improve the vestibule area and simulate one of the ISS International Space Station rooms. Environmental Education received $1,000 from Spring City Garden Club to further the outdoor garden projects. Butler Middle School received $1,000 from Gregory and Linda Burns for Butler Family Christmas. The district received several cameras and related equipment, estimated value of $1,000 from William Magna family to be used in the high school photography departments.
Wow. Thank you. The generosity is fantastic. That was a record, like you said, Darren. Thank you, everyone, for your generosity. Tonight, we do not have any expulsions to consider. And at this time, if any board member wishes to have any item set aside on the consent agenda, please indicate so at this time. Okay, otherwise, I will turn it over to Amanda Roddy to present the consent agenda for approval.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Earlier this evening, the Human Resources and Compensation Committee approved 3 retirements, 1 resignation, and 3 new or modified teacher contracts. The information was provided in your packets and an addendum was placed at your desk. I move that the consent agenda be approved as amended.
There's a motion. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Mr. McCaffrey. Discussion? Okay, Sue, please take the roll call vote.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Corey Montiel.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Kurt, are you on mute? Oh, he dropped.
Drop us, Kurt.
No.
Okay.
I think we'll have to make a note that his
That we lost
his feed
contact.
dropped.
Amanda Ratty.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 7-0. Moving on to the superintendent's report given by Dr. Siebert.
All right, thank you, Mr. Como. I will save my comments for our final agenda item this evening.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move into our committee reports at this time. As you know, we do rotate which committee goes first. And first up this month is the Human Resources and Compensation Committee given by Amanda Roddy.
Thank you again, Mr. President. Earlier this evening, the HR committee discussed the quarantine guidelines. In December, the CDC changed their quarantine guidelines, and SDW also made the adjustment. Previously, if a staff member or a student is in close contact with no symptoms, they had to quarantine for 14 days. Now, under the new guidelines, if a staff member or a student is at close contact and no one has symptoms, he or she can return after a 10-day quarantine. Additionally, if they are a close contact, have no symptoms, and have decided to get tested and test negative, they can also come back to work or school after a 7-day quarantine. But a test has to be taken within a specific window of days as outlined by the CDC. I know this can get confusing, but the district staff and students' contact tracers explain this to everyone they talk to and let them know per the proper return dates. The new guidance shortening the quarantine time has been helpful in getting students and staff back in the classrooms earlier than before.
Well, this is a discussion item. Anyone have any questions or comments on this? It's Corey.
Thank you. One of the parents, or actually a few of the parents mentioned, I think it's Ohio and 6 or 7 other states that have adjusted their quarantine procedures. And if my recollection is correct, I have the study here. It is if 2 individuals are within 6 feet of each other and one tests positive, but both parties are masked, that it doesn't result in a quarantine for the party that was not subsequently tested positive. Is there a reason we're not doing that? I know we're following county guidelines, but the county doesn't run the school district of Waukesha.
Yes, Diane?
I asked that question when we met with the doctors virtually through SWSA just this last time, and they said that has not been proven to be an acceptable alternative to the quarantine guidelines at this point.
You mentioned the 7 other states adopting this?
Well, they were not aware of it. They specifically that was the question. They didn't feel that it was, that they didn't know enough to say that was an acceptable alternative. So I tried asking, and hopefully they can maybe look into it more as we continue to look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Siebert, did you have something to add to that?
Well, I thought perhaps Dr. Cook might want to comment on it. He's our
I know
primary resource
you've been
on
our 2 primary contacts with the county.
Absolutely.
In the state?
Yeah, just to get to your question, Mr. Montiel, we have not received that guidance from the state DHS or from the county. When we adopted the updated quarantine guidelines, the 7 and 10 day, we actually got out ahead of Waukesha County on that. So if the state DHS gives us that latitude, we would certainly pursue that. We know that quarantine can be a problem, but we also don't know if there's if that helps prevent the spread of COVID. So we don't want to get out ahead of what our state DHS is saying. And we have been consistent with our state DHS's guidance since this thing began.
Understood, but don't the numbers that I was provided today from the district showing how many students have been quarantined, which I think is 6,000 or something, in the subsequent numbers that were
Corey, is your mic on?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was getting a signal back there that we couldn't hear you.
So the numbers, I believe, it's 6-something thousand students that were quarantined. I'm trying to find my notes. And the percentage of students who subsequently were moved from quarantine to isolation and tested positive, I believe, was 0.72%.
Correct.
So wouldn't that suggest that the quarantining of those students was not necessary as to the extent that we are quarantining? Because if we would not have quarantined those students, I don't see how the numbers would have been any different, the percentage. Because there wasn't transmission from the positive kids.
Yeah, correct. I mean, that could be. I can't say yes for certain. That could be, because not every kid who is put on quarantine is eventually tested. So that would complete that data set. If everybody got a test and we were able to then effectively rule out who was or who was not positive, that certainly could be the case. But it also could be argued that because those kids were quarantined, further spread did not happen in the schools. And so it's that balancing act. We don't really know. I mean, could that then have triggered more infection? Perhaps does that take out more teachers? And that's the balancing act that we do have. Without having, it's a reason why when we look to national studies, so we looked at a study out of North Carolina that was presented this week. We looked at a study out of Brown University. Brown looked at 200,000 kids, 65,000 adults in the school. I think we talked about it at the safety committee last month. We found very few rates of infection in those schools, but those were schools that had all of the mitigation components that we have and also quarantined kids. So, if you remove one, do you get more cases, I guess, is the potential concern.
The issue with the asymptomatic kids that we are not subsequently tested who have been quarantined, I understand that argument, but statistically, of that age group of students who are in our school district, statistically, the asymptomatic kids are going to be the same, whether they're quarantined or not there. So I think the assumption, not by you, but others, that we are letting asymptomatic kids slip through if they're not quarantined applies on both sides. So statistically, I don't think it would make a difference. The other points I understand. My worry is if we do switch to full 5 days, face-to-face, and we don't adjust the quarantine measures, we're doing a whole lot about nothing, which is hard.
So when we look back, when we were back in the 4-day-a-week face-to-face model, we can't say with 100% certainty, but the event of Halloween seemed to trigger thereafter a lot of kids getting quarantined. And so we were back in a 4-day-a-week model at the secondary level. Halloween happened, and then shortly thereafter Halloween, we started to see more kids sick, and then that triggered more quarantines. Now, we were in a hybrid model when Thanksgiving happened, but Thanksgiving did not trigger the same thing. So did people not gather the same way during Thanksgiving? Did the block party not happen? When we talked when we followed up anecdotally at the secondary level, we learned that there were a lot of common parties that kids were at that then triggered a lot of kids getting sick and then taking more students out from a quarantine. Right now, and I don't have the exact percentage, but when we look at our list as we track, we have somewhere between 66 and 75% of the kids right now who are on quarantine, their case happened either through athletics or outside of school. So we're tracking inside of school and outside of school. We wanted to look at that preliminarily as we get into this meeting tonight to see where is the infection happening. So it's happening outside in most cases, the contact is. And so again, when we start talking about just the general CDC guidelines, like what is affecting school, it's what's happening outside of school then that is coming into school and it's creating the issue. So if the board decides later tonight to say 5 days a week, we know that our mitigation practices work. We're very confident in that. Our data has suggested that up to this point. But part of our mitigation plan has been quarantine for students who have then been close contacts. So if we remove that, maybe it's not as effective. Could be as effective. I don't know. We've never done this before.
Thank you.
Ms. Reinchuk.
Thank you. Dr. Cook, I have another question.
Karen, could you talk up or turn on your mic?
The mic is on and it's right in front. Benjamin, can you hear me? Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
So, back to the Halloween or the Thanksgiving. Could it have been that Thanksgiving is usually with family, and where Halloween they were going, like you said, a block party or going from house to house gathering candy, and they were more exposed to the other people outside their family and maybe didn't have masks on, depending on their costume or whatever, maybe at a block party. So if they are in school and they do have their masks on, or if they are with family gatherings, then I would think that they would be safer, and that comparison, it might be different. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I believe that the national data and our local data show that the mitigation plans that we've put in schools have been effective at reducing the spread in the school environment, absolutely. We also know that based off of what we observed after Halloween and what we see nationally, that unmasked activities that happen outside of the home or outside of school, are triggering that. So I don't disagree with you at all.
Okay, so then, like we were at Muskego last night for a diving match. I was told they weren't closed at all. They haven't closed at all yet. Well, and some other districts, if they're all having their own mitigation efforts, and ours are not identical, and theirs are working, could it just be the common denominator is the mask?
As far as reducing the masking has been found to be very effective. Yes, I don't know all the ins and outs of every other district's plan. I do know that some local districts have shut down for extended periods. Some districts shut down, I think it was on the front and back end of Thanksgiving, I think it was, and some districts extended their winter breaks, to try to prevent any spread into school. So there have been varying degrees of closure around the area here, and then certainly around the state. So masking does work, though.
Okay, so when you say our mitigation efforts are working, and ours are, and we're not sure what everybody else is doing to a T, but we do know that these schools do have masks, and those with masks are seeing success.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
As success is measured right now, yes.
Other questions or comments on the quarantine topic? Okay, Ms. Roddy.
Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our policy committee, given by Mr. Blumgren.
Okay. I do have this evening 2 action items and 1 discussion item. The action items, first one actually consists of 2 policies: revisions to policy 3122, drug-free workplace for professional staff, and 4122.01, drug-free workplace for support staff. These policies have been expanded to include a requirement that the staff handbooks contain information regarding the standards expected of our staff members, and also includes updates involving THC and CBD products. We've discussed this before. It's been around for a couple months now. I move for approval of these 2 policies as presented.
A second to that?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Montijo. Discussion? Comments? Yes, Diane.
When it comes to the THC products, we talked about this at the policy committee meeting. I think it's extremely important that we communicate that there are a lot of those products that are available, like at the CDC store kinds of locations that are popping up on Main Street, and that people realize that this is against our policy, even though they're readily available in the community. Everything from, soft drinks to, just a variety of different kinds of products. And so just that concern that our staff's aware of that, those are illegal items in our context.
Mr. Montijo?
Yeah, I agree with Mrs. Voigt. I actually went to, I think maybe the same store downtown Waukesha and looked for CBD oil. And I asked if there's any detectable THC, and they said yes. So yeah, you've got to be very careful. The FDA does not monitor these. They don't approve them. There's no really independent testing. So it's a person's responsibility who uses those things.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments on these 2 policies? Okay, Sue, will you please take the roll call vote to approve policy number 3122.01 and 4122.01?
Is Kurt back on?
Yes, Kurt,
Okay.
can you hear us?
Aye.
Okay, good. We lost you
aye.
there for a moment.
Yes,
Patrick
we did.
McCaffrey.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
Corey Montiel.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 8-0. Bill?
Thank you. We also have new policies, policy 6147, debt management and delete policy, and policy 6145 was a previous policy for borrowing. That one will be moving for deletion because it's incorporated into 6147. Policy 6147 describes various different debt mode methods, procedures, and the board philosophy regarding debt management. This new policy incorporates the provisions of the borrowing policy 6145, which is recommended for deletion. I'll also add that this policy has been vetted quite a bit by Darren for our business office. I will at this point move for approval of new policy 6147 and the deletion of policy 6145 as presented.
Is there a second to that? Second by Ms. Voigt. Discussion, questions, comments? Okay, Sue, please take the roll call vote.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
Diane Voigt. Aye. Corey Montiel.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye, passes 8-0. Sue? Bill?
Thank you. The other discussion item is a new policy which is coming forward, 2261.03, District and School Report Card. This new policy describes Title I's requirement to prepare report cards specific to Title I services and to incorporate a reference to the State Accountability Report. This item will be returned to Policy Committee for the next reading, actually next week, and brought back to the full board in February for final approval.
Is there any questions or comments that people would like to make on this?
This is really following Title I directions, so.
Sure. Okay, Bill.
And that's just a discussion or information item. At this point, the next Policy Committee meeting is scheduled for January 19th, next Tuesday at 4 p.m., and that completes my report.
Thank you. Moving on to our Technology Committee, given by Mrs. Boyd.
We have not met, and we're working on trying to schedule a meeting for early February.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Moving on to Finance and Facilities, given by Patrick McCaffrey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have one item and three question information items on the agenda this evening. The action item is the approval of open enrollment space availability for 2021-2022. The committee reviewed the 2021-2022 enrollment projections and the forecasted available space in our programs. This item is being brought forward to the board as an action item. I move to approve the 2021-2022 open enrollment space availability plan as presented.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Montiel. Discussion, comments, questions? This is something that we're required to declare each year before the open enrollment begins, and so we're very familiar with this process over the years. So I'm not surprised there isn't much discussion on it. So, Sue, why don't you please take the roll call vote?
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Corey Montiel.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Kurt.
Kurt, can you hear us? Kurt, can you hear us?
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 7-0.
Kurt just put his thumb up.
Oh,
8-0.
passes 8-0, Sue.
Okay.
Let the record show. Yes, Pat.
Alrighty. My first information discussion item is the referendum project update. Kate Egan from Bray Architects provided an update on Phase 3 of the referendum projects, which includes the secure entrances for Hawthorne, Hillcrest, and Whittier. The projects are being reviewed at the January 27th Plan Commission meeting, and bid documents will be released in February with construction scheduled to begin in the spring.
Any questions or discussion on this? It is nice to be able to look at all the progress that we've made, much of it ahead of schedule, and we'll keep moving forward, and you know, we're on budget, and it's all looking good. Hey, Patrick?
Thank you. My next discussion information item is the 2021-2022 long-range budget forecast. The committee reviewed the long-range budget projection, which currently shows a budget annual deficit of $4.5 to $5 million in fiscal year 2021-2022. The purpose of this annual projection is to provide a benchmark to work from as the district works to develop a balanced 2021-2022 budget and address our long-term structural deficit.
Any questions or discussion on this? I hope Mr. Clark can hear me. Darren, I would appreciate it if you could come back into the room. I do have a question for you.
On his way, Joe.
Thank you. Oh, no, thank you, Darren, I appreciate it. We're trying to social distance. We did measure being 6 feet apart, so appreciate you coming back in. We're talking about our 21-22 long-range budget forecast, and we had some discussion at the F&F meeting that I'd like you to maybe just kind of comment on. And you know, how has COVID impacted our long-range planning? I actually had a constituent ask me more on that today. So if you could just kind of share some of your thoughts on that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, the projection, it's hard. Historically, we've been very predictable. Our routines have been the same. Our staffing, all those things have been pretty easy to identify. But in looking at going forward, there's some federal dollars. I'll just start with the federal money, just to go in some sort of order here, that we've applied for that we don't know if we're getting or not. And the biggest one right now is a claim with FEMA, and we have no experience working with FEMA. We don't know if that decision is coming in a week or a year. You have no way of knowing. And why that's important is there's costs that we've claimed in there that could be claimed under the First CARES Act. If it gets claimed under FEMA, we can slide other, because we have plenty of COVID-related costs. We can slide that in, and those federal dollars, and you have a new CARES Act, we call it CARES 2, I don't know if that's the formal name or not, but that might allow us to run out longer and have these federal dollars help us through what I think is now a 2-year budget cycle concern. So there's also the unemployment reimbursement we think we're getting, but to get an answer from the unemployment department, and I know they're busy, is hard to know when those dollars are coming. So in terms of the federal dollars, not only do I think we can get some support if everything falls our way to help us this, and we're projecting into 21-22 now, is get that information as soon as we can so we can plan around that. The timing of that in terms of an audit report that might come to you as a board, if all those funds hit me in one fiscal year, we might have one very lucrative year just because of the timing of the payment, not because of the financial position the school district's in. So that's important. We identified a potential shortfall of $4.7 million for next year, but again, the federal dollars could offset that to a certain degree. So administratively, in cabinet, we're working towards a target of about $2.5 million of cuts. But we think and we hope a lot of that will come from eliminating COVID-related staffing and costs that we've built into the budget this year. So we've begun that process. The biggest decision on the board level is what's the instructional delivery model going to be? Because
for 21-22 22.
For 21, 22, exactly, not the decision that's on the agenda tonight. And once we know that, that'll help me firm up the expense side. So I think we're in a pretty good position to go on top of all that. We're heading into a new state biennial budget cycle. And I've steadily heard, and I don't have hard numbers, but the state's budget isn't nearly as bad as what we thought it might be last April or May. So it's really, all this is really, just like everything else, clouded where we are. But I think if we make some right sizing in terms of eliminating COVID-related costs we no longer need, and a lot of that, most of that comes in the form of staffing for your eAchieve virtual and face-to-face instructional model. That's not the most efficient way. And I want to stress to everyone, this whole year has never been about money. I challenge anyone to find anywhere on a tape that I've said anything about it, because it's been about survival and getting through it and trying to deliver the best services. But so the model, the forecast will change with time as we learn more. But I think we're on top of where we are, and I think we've put ourselves in a position to navigate at least next year fairly reasonably. So, but everyone has their own measurement of that. So, is that?
Yeah, I appreciate.
There's a lot going on, so I'm trying to make it concise. But
I appreciate that. Yeah, we had a much longer discussion at our Finance and Facility Committee meeting on Monday. But I wanted to give some perspective to our audience, the complexity of, and people know that that COVID has injected complexities at many levels, staffing, finance. So right now we're essentially footing the bill for the extra monies out of our fund balance. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that goes back to last March when the board made, or the district made some tough decisions not to continue to pay vendors, to lay off some staff. That's not something we're used to doing. That's not something we seek to do. But it set up some money in fund balance to help us through all this as well. One other thing I want to add on the federal dollars, and it's very important, though 21, 22 might be fine as we ride out those federal dollars, anytime you're running your operation on one-time money, there comes that year where that money goes away. And I think the board and us administratively are going to be having some tougher conversations about what are the next steps, because our structural deficit that we've been working under for years is still there. With all the chaos with our enrollment numbers, whether it's eAchieve or virtual or in all these things, there's still that structural issue that we need to address on an annual basis, as far as I can tell.
So from a financial perspective, would it be fair to say that we're looking at about a 3-year impact that COVID has, minimum, really, on us?
Yeah, I would say this year and definitely the next 2.
All right,
and likely the third one after that too. So, but
3 to 4 years then, sure. I mean, it's broader or maybe longer than what people may really realize at this time. So we're looking at that. We're trying to pay close attention to that. We're staying on top of the federal and state agencies that we need to stay on to see if we can receive the appropriate reimbursements. Those are still big question marks. We're hopeful, but until you actually receive the money, we don't have it.
You make an interesting point on how long COVID's effect will be with us, and what we're trying to do now is some of our COVID things, some of the changes in our processes, cleaning is a very simple example, but does that ever go away? I don't know if it ever does or not, but there might be some legacy COVID costs that are with us and just become part of our normal operations, and that could cross the board, whether it's cleaning or staffing or whatever. So it could go on forever.
Any other questions or comments with respect to our long-range budget? Okay, Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. President. My final discussed and information item is the monthly budget report. Revenues and expenditures continue to be within budgeted limits for both the general and special education fund. The district is operating in accordance with our approved budget and all other funds as well.
Any other questions or comments on that? Patrick?
Our next scheduled F&F meeting is on February 8th at 5:30 p.m. in the boardroom. And Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. McCaffrey. Appreciate it. Moving on to teaching and learning. Bill, presenting tonight?
Yes, I am. The Teaching and Learning Committee meeting was held January 5th, 2021. 2 action items and 1 discussion information item appear on the agenda for this evening. The first action item, approval of math curricular resources. Resources there is kind of similar to books. Over the course of the last 2 months, the math team has presented the process for vetting, piloting, and recommending a math resource to be used in Integrated Math 1, 2, and 3. And we are seeking to adopt, this is the name of it, Agile Minds, that's the name of the resource, and CPM, another resource, as curricular resources to support integrated math as presented. On a vote at the committee meeting of 4-0, the Teaching and Learning Committee approved the adoption of Agile Minds and CPM, which stands for College Prep Math, as a curricular resource to support integrated math as presented. We request the board for approval. I so move.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Amanda. Discussion?
I'll just add to that the team that they've put together for this integrated math over the long term has been a very effective team. And the work they came in with and the presentation they gave on these particular resources was really quite conclusive, very, very strongly presented and very approachable for what our kids are going to be having to be used. So,
other questions or comments? Okay, Sue, will you please take the roll call vote on adopting Agile Minds and College Prep Math?
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
Corey Montiel.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye, passes 8-0. Bill?
okay, thank you. Approval of, the other item is approval of the learning environment transition criteria. Dr. Siebert and Dr. Cook presented updates to the mitigation plan and the proposed transition criteria between learning models. If approved at the full board meeting, the district criteria and community criteria will be available on our website as well. I know that Mary Jo is still working with that, but that will happen. On a vote of 4-0 at the committee meeting, the environment transition criteria as presented, we request board approval, and I am moving for that.
Is there a second to that?
Aye.
Second by Kurt. Discussion? Yes, Diane.
I have a real concern about the sub-fill rate as demonstrated with the lack of the criteria being met on, it was 16 times at the point that I looked at it about a week ago. And just how is the district addressing that particular sub-fill rate concern?
Who would like to address that? Thank you, Joe.
As far as the strategies to address the subfill rate, I think there's been a discussion around, having HR and F&F discuss that. But if it would be possible, I can show you how this criteria plays out, and then you can see the impact of subfill rate in the whole picture, if that would be helpful to the board in the discussion. So if you give me a moment here. There we are. I think we're here. So I'll blow this up just so you can see that on the screen. So what you have in front of you is a summary of the 8 criteria. And in the paragraph, you can see that we're looking at 25% student absenteeism, 20% staff absenteeism, subfill rate below 75% for 5 consecutive days, 25% of our buildings in virtual learning, our food service or transportation not being able to function, 1,000 new cases over a 10-day period of time, and then 75% of the acute hospital beds and 85% of the ICU beds. So you can see those 8 criteria listed there, and this will be available for the public. When you go down into the chart here, you can see, and I'll show you what the last 15 days or so looks like where we had school. You can see that we've met 2 of these criteria in the last 15 days. One of those, the green one, is subfill, and then the orange is where we're at as far as acute hospital beds. That's 2 of the 6 criteria that we're at, right now. If we look down at the history, we can then expand this so that you can see where we've been from a criteria standpoint. Right after Thanksgiving, you can see this was a busier time for us. We met 3 of the criteria. The week before Thanksgiving, the first full week before Thanksgiving, we were meeting 4 of the 8 criteria. And so while we don't have a good strategy right now, Mrs. Voigt, to address where we are at with substitute teachers, like I believe it was talked about before, where we're looking at different ways to attract people. At our busiest time so far this year, we've only met 4 of the 8 criteria, and that would not have triggered a board meeting to discuss the learning level at that time. So if the board approves this will be public for our community to see, and they can monitor then on a day-by-day basis where we're at as it pertains to this transition requirements. So if that sheds any light on where it fits into this, it's one component of the 8. It is a component that we meet frequently, but when you look at the other components of this, we're not meeting those other components regularly. So if it puts that into perspective on the overall transition requirement discussion.
And we do have agendized for F&F and for Human Resource and Compensation Committee to take a closer look at this particular topic. So on the subfill rate. What do we do?
Talking
How do
about
we improve
the
that?
subfill?
Yep, and how do we improve that? Yes, so those 2 things have been asked. We've asked our administrators and our chair people to work on that. Chair people at the board level. Mr. Munn, did you have anything more, Diane? I'm sorry.
It's just the concern is 75% fill rate means that, there are a lot of people having to cover within the building to be able to keep things going. And that's a really poor working environment, I know they often would merge classes together when a sub wasn't there. And with our COVID expectations to have social distancing, that opportunity isn't available in many situations to do the class mergers. And it turns out to be a lot of extra work for the staff that is able to be in the building to cover that, especially with, I think it's an extremely high threshold to have it be a concern. To have 75% fill is, and that's the 10-day average. So how low was it? On some days, if that is the average of it. So that would be my concern: is what is the fill rate every day, and what can we do to address it? Because that's just not good.
Mr. Montiel?
Thank you, Mr. Como. Dr. Cook, there's been some discussion or questions about whether this applies both ways. Does it only generate a meeting with the board if we exceed those limits, those 8, or if we go backwards, if they go above and come back down?
If our numbers keep going down, I guess these 2 discussions are kind of linked, right? You have transition criteria, and then there's a later discussion on the learning level. Based off of what's discussed at the learning level, so let's just say, right, just for the sake of the argument, let's say we go to 5 days a week. We're in the highest level of face-to-face service we could be providing. This then would only direct us in one direction. If we stayed in the hybrid model, then we would have to take a look at, okay, what criteria then would say it's now appropriate to go to a 5-day model? If we were to look at our current data trends in Waukesha County, we have seen everything go down in Waukesha County. We've seen everything go down in the state as far as the numbers that we're seeing. So, I mean, is it an appropriate time to go 5 days? I guess it can be used in the other direction. We haven't found the benchmarks yet to take us in the other direction. But again, it's not an automatic. It's not saying that if we do this, then we become 5 days. Or if we do this, then we go full virtual. What it's saying is if we hit these markers, we're going to come to the board and say, Board of Education, we need to have a conversation around, here's our data. Is this the appropriate learning model? And then we get into a discussion with the board.
Understood.
So the board has a control over the learning model. We're trying to set some criteria then that would trigger a further discussion. And I think that goes back to a November board meeting. I think Darren was wise enough to start capturing the conversation and areas of concern.
The concern I have is if we, with those criteria, I think meet 8 of them, it'll trigger a board meeting to discuss transitioning between models, which is fine. But we don't automatically get a triggered board meeting if we go backwards. I mean, the board can call a meeting, a special meeting at any time.
Absolutely.
But that's solely up to, I believe, the board president. So my concern is if there's 9 board members and we're going backwards and trying to go back to 5 days, that we don't get a board meeting unless one of the 9 says we're going to get a board meeting. And the policy decision to go between models, 5 days, 4 days hybrid, is solely and entirely the board's decision. It's a policy decision. So I understand that's trying to help this, but unless it goes both ways, I don't think, if it doesn't go both ways, I think it is this incrementalism stepping on the policy prerogative of the board. And I know it's not the intent, but I just see it that way. I don't know why it wouldn't go both ways.
Well, perhaps if the board had some guidance as far as these criteria, like for instance, if we had 0 of the criteria, would the board then not want to meet and maybe go in the other direction? So if we're using this criteria to step us down from 5 days to 4 days to hybrid to virtual, if we had 0 criteria being met over a 5-day period of time, could that then not trigger? Would that just be a layer that we added to this that says, okay, board, you can now have your meeting, or you should have your meeting, or we're recommending you have your meeting to then discuss this? This was looking at trying to capture, I believe, months of conversation around should we be face-to-face or should we be hybrid or should we be virtual? And then it also tried to roll into the discussion around is gating criteria appropriate or do we not, is gating criteria inappropriate this time because we're already so far down the road? You know, we were trying to really just come up to this is a sound time for us to recommend to you to meet and discuss. And we looked at the 5-day metrics, and that's why we wanted to try to have a summary on here so that the board, so that the community at large could see what our history has been as it pertains to these criteria, so that we could perhaps objectively come up with a point in time when it's then appropriate to revisit the model. You know, if the conversation later tonight goes to, yes, we'll be 5 days a week, then the only direction this criteria would take us would be less face-to-face instruction. If it's not that, then perhaps the work then that we are asked to do as administrators is to come up with what's the benchmark then that we should have where the recommendation is to meet then to discuss the learning level again.
Fair enough. And I do support this. I just wanted some clarification on that and an understanding with the public and our constituents that this is not a prospective order. If 2 + 2 equals this, it's going to automatically switch. This is a recommendation of a board meeting. So I know the public wants, I keep calling it gating criteria. I think that's wrong. But they want some sort of predictability in what may or may not occur. As long as the policy decision remains with the elected officials, which is therefore remaining with the people, I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Yes, Diane?
This I see as being district-wide decision to go full virtual.
Correct.
And how would the individual school decision to shut down when, based on, like we did back in November, and as you look at the model there in that month, there are many schools individually that shut down, and how is that communicated to parents, how those decisions are being made?
So in addition to this, we have available the presentations from the last several months where we talked about addressing things on a classroom, grade level, a house level at the secondary level, at the middle school level, and then as a school level. So we still have those criteria, and those are taken care of by Dr. Siebert and I. We talk, we review them on a regular basis. That stuff is monitored hour by hour internally, and if we have to make a decision to, for instance, close a classroom or switch a classroom to virtual, we'll do that. If it is a grade level, we'll continue to do that. You've seen that this week, as we've, had some cases spike in some areas.
And I appreciate that has been happening, and that has been the way the procedures have gone. But how is that communicated to parents to know that you look at this, that's very different than how you make the decision on an individual school? Because this is the whole district, and that's a lot, trying to impact all the different buildings involved rather than just one where there might be a hotspot.
Correct. And in our mitigation plan, which we discussed in the past several months, you can see those tables that we use as a guide to discuss, is it appropriate to close a classroom or a school or whatever it is and switch to virtual. So that is in our mitigation plan, which was presented, I believe it was teaching, learning, safety, I think even at the full board in the last 2 months.
Is that available for parents, though? The
It's online,
transparency
yes.
piece?
The presentations are all online, yep.
Okay.
Questions? Mr. McCaffrey?
Yeah, the only real issue that I have with this plan, with the transition plan, is the community spread and infection rate. They don't really track between the school. They're pretty
Pat,
far.
can you talk a little louder?
They're pretty they're pretty far apart, and that's my concern. I understand the top part. If we can't transport the children to school, that's going to be a problem. If we can't feed them in school, that's going to be a problem. If we can't have the teachers in the classrooms, that's also a problem in instructing the children. But my concern is always linking the schools, which have proven, because of our mitigation and the work that we have done, and the staff and the custodial staff and everybody in the district has done, our spread and our infection rate is low in the schools, and I am always concerned about tying whether or not we're going to move between models to the community as a whole. So I would have a hard time voting for these criteria with the community in there. I mean, I completely understand the top part, but the 85% of ICU beds has little impact on the schools. None of those three have minimal impact on our schools because of the plans that we have put in place and that we have worked hard to maintain. So those, I wouldn't be able to vote for at all. Another problem I see, for instance, is the 20% staff absenteeism. I would have a hard time voting to shut down the district, period, completely. I didn't agree with it. Governor Evers did it in March and continued through the end of last year, and I don't agree with it now. So 25% student absenteeism, I think that our strength has been how we've managed it, building, by classroom and grade and building. So to put a 25% student absenteeism and where we maybe have buildings that can stay open, that's a concern for me too.
Yeah. And so if I could just direct you up to the screen just to address your staff one. So we've color coded this. Red is bad, green is good. And this is the staff attendance rate going back to November 2nd. And so what you see is the percent absent in the green. And if it's green, that means that we're below that 20% threshold. I will advance for you. And here are our staff attendance rates. So at about midway through the year, we've never hit an attendance level with our staff that suggests this is a problem. But to get to Mrs. Voigt's question earlier about subs, there's going to be a critical point in this district when you start to look at how people are trying to cover, where we should be talking as a system, is this sustainable? And it does go beyond schools because of how we are trying to spread coverage around the district. As we discussed, or as you asked the question on the student absenteeism, again, this is reported as the total number of students absent. And you can see that during our most impacted periods, we've had 22% of our kids out. We haven't hit that 25% threshold. So again, when we hit that point as an organization where we are saying that, of our, say, 10,000 kids who are with us face-to-face, 2,500 are out because either they're sick or quarantined or on family vacation or whatever it might be, like that's kind of the ouch. And we're also saying that that's over a 5-day period of time. So these criteria in and of themselves could be problematic, I believe, but when you look at them as a full opportunity to say, where are we at as a school district and where are we at as a community? Because with this, yes, we can do a good job of mitigating, but there is going to be an impact, I believe, from the community when you go to, I'm sorry here, the cases per thousand, if you remember back into early December and in November, we saw, and when we had the meeting in November, I think it was, when we were discussing the idea of gating criteria, you know, we went from active cases in the village of Waukesha and the city of Waukesha from 900 to near, I think it was near 1,600, 1,700 in a 1 week period of time. And it was shortly thereafter that we started to track this a different way because the county did. And you can see that at the beginning of this chart, which corresponded to the highest level of active infections in the community, we were at 922 new cases over a 10-day period of time, going to then where we've been at since our winter break and over our winter break, you know, we're less than 500. You know, so as a single indicator that would say it's not safe for us to be in school, I would completely agree with you. But as one indicator of 8 that, hey, we should be keeping an eye on it, that's where I believe that's why it's important for us to continue to monitor that as a criteria. Additionally, with hospital beds, you know, we are here to make sure our kids get the highest level of education, but we also have an obligation to make sure our staff are in a good place as well. And we know that our staff have a much higher opportunity to end up in the hospital than our kids do. And if we start to see that those beds are filling up within our community, does that then perhaps say, hey guys, we may be in a position where our staff are going to need the hospital experience as well. So that's why we wanted to build in, I believe, a component of that. And that was I think that was an important piece of the idea behind gating criteria that we brought into this as a criteria.
Kurt?
Yeah, when we discussed this at TNL, I voted for it because I see it as a communication tool, not a black and white, we're going to do this or we're going to do that. That happens when the administration decides to make a recommendation to us, and we as a board decide to make a change or not make a change based on that recommendation. This gating criteria is something that allows the community to see a number of factors that are important to most other communities. I think the board as a whole has said we don't want to be going fully virtual across the district because we want to avoid that for sure. And depending upon how the vote goes later tonight, I believe that if we go face-to-face, our goal will be to stay face-to-face. It won't be to roll back. I also believe that the factors that are more important that aren't on the criteria, which don't need to be on the criteria, is hospitalizations. And if the hospitalizations levels get very, very high, above what we saw in November, I think that's more of a factor to be concerned about from a community perspective. And then I have a feeling that might impact the administration's concerns. Again, the board has the final decision on all this. I tend to follow administration recommendations. That's been my history on this particular matter. And the criteria is just something that helps us communicate to the community what's important. And part of staying face-to-face, if we decide to go that way, is making sure we communicate to the community what's important, so they understand that we are looking at these things as impacting our ability to stay face-to-face. So that's the reason I support it. I'm not trying to say it should be a black and white thing because I don't think it is. I really trust the administration on most of this stuff.
Mr. Baumgart.
Yeah, and appreciate what Kurt offered and the questions, because it's important that everybody, including the community, understand that this is, as Kurt said, it's going to bring it, whatever issues come up on the numbers, it's going to bring the board together to look at it. So, I mean, you could take something ridiculous. If we had 25%, but they're all out of one building, it can't happen. I know statistically that's not true. We wouldn't shut down the district. We would shut down a building. So we know that. And you got to get all up to 6 out of the 8, right, before you're going to have it. So this is not a trigger. It's a point of studying it. So when we go through this transition process, we're going to be looking at a number of things. If we would get enough to pull the board together, we would make a decision based on that building or that grade or whatever it is, and maybe if it was spread throughout the whole place, we might have to take it. But we are not moving away from to Diane's point, we are not moving away from the concept of a building or a classroom or a certain grade or whatever it might be. We've been very successful by dealing with that rather than hold the district. So
the approach has been effect the fewest number of students as possible.
And we should feel good about that, regardless of what. Never mind.
Diane?
I totally agree with what he's saying. I think our model of doing it, thinking about each individual, the smallest classroom level that you can identify the problem and address it is extremely important. I think this criteria is such that it makes a statement to the community that we're not trying to go back to virtual. That is, it's not like a very low threshold and we're going to be right back into that virtual environment. We're really all about trying to be face-to-face in as much of a safe environment as possible. I think this helps to indicate that to the community.
And if I could just add to that, it gives us the opportunity to say, yes, we're having infections in the community, but we're not experiencing that in school. Here's where the community is at, here's where the school is at. So we then have the ability to tease out the community discussion, which we hear sometimes, and focus solely on the school discussion. Or it might be the case that the school the community is doing okay, but perhaps we have an issue going on in the district, and then perhaps it triggers us a discussion around our mitigation strategies and such. So it does work both ways in that light, that it doesn't just factor on community, which was all the gating criteria talked about when we were discussing that in November and December.
Karen?
Thank you. I also feel that some of these are either, I definitely agree with the food and the bus issue and the sub rate or sub-fill rate. But I wouldn't be comfortable voting for this either. I understand that you need a way out. If things get bad, we need to be able to call it. But I feel like this is, I would vote for 8 out of 8, but not 6 out of 8. I think it needs to be a little less. I think 8 out of 8 is what I would do. Or just alter some of these numbers, because I just don't see them really being a factor for us. And when we're all back in school and if that happens and we are face-to-face, I do see some of these things going up. So I think 8 out of 8 would be a good compromise, or just adjust some of these numbers.
On Monday.
And again, the one thing that I'd add to the discussion is this is not, we go from hybrid to face-to-face or face-to-face to virtual. This is, we hit the benchmarks, we should convene a board meeting, and then the board can discuss what's the appropriate step and what's the appropriate direction. This is just that objective, we're there, we should schedule a meeting and discuss it. It's not we're there and we should go from 5 days a week face-to-face to hybrid. That decision would still lie with the board. This is just a trigger point for us.
Mr. Montijo.
Very briefly, Mr. McCaffrey's points I think were excellent. Along those lines, I think if we have all 8, there's a perception that the board has, I think there could be a perception that the board has said those 8 things are the factors that are determinative in how we are going to vote. But what I'm hearing from you is no, I mean, the board can vote however it wants.
Correct.
But as Mr. McCaffrey is trying to check, perhaps of those 8, there can be a motion that says, look, we're adopting this, but we're not adopting all 8, or we're doing 6, or we're doing whatever. I believe just because it's presented as it is, it can still be modified. So,
Yes, definitely amendments can be made to this motion.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
That's all.
That's how I would summarize. Other questions or comments? Or I guess I would look for amendments too. Yes, Karen.
I would like to make an amendment that all 8 criteria be met for moving to have a board meeting.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Anybody, Corey? Discussion? Bill?
That means there's a lot less probability that the board would be meeting.
Yeah, I would, that is
He
correct.
is dangerous.
Mr. Montiel?
I understood, and I agree, but the board can also call a special meeting, so it's not impossible, but fair point.
Other discussion on the amendment to go from 6 to 8 criteria, meeting all before we trigger a board meeting. Yes, Amanda?
Thank you. To the administration, you came up with this list of criteria as a trigger point to have for the board to convene, to consider it. What was your thought process of selecting 6 versus all 8?
So what we were trying to do, Ms. Roddy, is the 2 of lunch service and transportation, essentially, if we don't have one of those, it's going to be hard to have school in general, even in the short term. So if we didn't have any transportation, it would almost be like a snow day. I might have to say we can't have school that particular day. Same way if we had a major outbreak in the lunch staff and we couldn't provide food, we probably couldn't have school for a period of time until we could correct that. So when we took those 2, we thought they were critically important in the overall operation of the district, but we took those 2 somewhat out and said, if we meet the other 6, that's a reason that we would bring the board together to have that consideration. Those 2, while they're very important, if we had all of those other 6 and we didn't have any lunch service and we didn't have any bus service, we'd be in some significant trouble.
Yes, Karen?
Thank you. There's 7, and then it looks like those 2 are lumped together.
Oh, good point, Ms. Ranichek. Yes, so I misspoke. So
okay.
6 of the 8, with one of them being the 2 together.
And I definitely agree that you could call it just like a snow day, and you could say, we have no food, we have no buses.
Sure.
And that would be a given.
Yes.
And you would have the authority to do that because you have to
Sure.
those days. But, and that's great. I just don't understand all of the other ones.
Great point.
Joe, did you have a comment?
Yeah, the only comment to just add to respond to Amanda's question, when you consider that we have had a period of time in Waukesha where we did have 6 schools, 25% of our district that was virtual, where we did have a very high community rate in Waukesha, where the hospital beds were full, where the district was experiencing a lot of cases, we never hit the threshold of 6. And so when you started to look at what would be appropriate to say, okay, Board of Ed, we need to sit down and meet again and talk about this, it was like we've been through a big period. We had a period after that we were able to manage. What would be a point where it would be very difficult for us to manage operationally? And we felt that if we hit 6 of those, we would really have a hard time doing an effective job of instructing kids. So we should talk with you as a board to see if we want to stay the course in the level that we're at or make a transition. If we got to 8, we perhaps could be in a position where we might not be able to run anyway. And then administration is making the decision to effectively go between levels out of necessity instead of coming to the board and saying, hey, let's have a talk before it gets critical. 6 of those 8 could make it very difficult for us. If we've got 25% student absenteeism, 20% staff absenteeism, where our sub rate is very low, where we're having difficulties with food service, if that's 4, but the community is doing okay, then we're having a hard time running. And then you're leaving the decision, which I believe Mr. Montijo and other board members the past couple months said, we want to make a decision on the learning model. What we're trying to do is say, we're going to get to a point where it's going to be difficult for us to run. We need to engage you. 8 of 8, it might be very difficult.
I'm sorry. Darren, did you want to add a comment on to this?
Just wanted to add one other thing, because we all know over the last 10 months we can argue over studies and all that, but one of the things when we identified these criteria, one of the goals was to take a slice of what the different groups out there wanted. Some people were very concerned about non-district numbers in our county. So I thought to admit those would be ignoring their comments. I agree that, and I think we all value the in-district data more. The hospital room one was, is there something greater going on in the community that maybe we need to be responsive to for the greater good? So we tried to meld all the arguments that were being made into something that everyone could walk away with and say, you know what, they recognize what I said. This isn't perfect. But the overriding thing is, it comes back to you. And that was, I think, the most important part of this criteria, is you still get to decide as the representatives of all of those groups that we tried to incorporate into the criteria. So just a little background.
So Amanda was asking what was behind administration's, thought process. And that's why I wanted you gentlemen to kind of chime in at that time. Amanda, did you have a follow-up first on that?
I was just wanting to understand where you're coming from, so thank you.
Karen?
Thank you. I just, my son has been saying there's really no one at school at South. Like, there's 3 people in his classes. And I said, I've heard from a lot of people, and I want to hear from you. And this kind of goes to the next one, but I'll bring it back. So he said, I either want to go all virtual or all face-to-face. And he said, the reason is because my friends that are face-to-face are, my friends that are completely virtual are cheating on their homework. And then when they go back to, and then they can take their test at home. When I'm going back and forth, I'm not learning, he said, and then I go back to school, and then I have to take a test. So he's not doing well. So he'd rather just cheat and blow off this year or actually learn something. And that's really sad. So he said that there's no one really in school right now. Well, when all the kids come back, if they do, if we vote on 5 days, we're going to have a flux of people actually coming back, and the school will be full. We might hit a lot of these because of what's in our schools, but that nothing might happen in our community, or a lot might happen because this is happening. So I feel like if we're going to look at it, we need to have a lot of that's why I said the 8 out of 8, because we are going to see a difference when all the kids come back, or if they all come back. We're going to see that because there really isn't anyone there right now, so our numbers are low. So if they do come back, then you're going to start seeing numbers, and then that's just a reflection of the kids coming back. It's not a reflection, and a percentage of that. It's not a reflection of, oh, everything's going haywire. It's just because there's going to be more kids there. We don't have a whole lot of kids there right now.
Yes, Diane.
Going back to the 6 versus 8, I think that is enough to start our conversation, and it's going to take 3 days to get to the point of having us come together, per se. But I think 6 is enough to start us talking and get us together. If we get to 8, I think we're already to the point of no return. That obviously at that point something's going to have to happen. I think the 6 versus 8 gets us to be paying attention as the transitions, as a transition might be necessary.
Other questions or comments? Yeah, I'm feeling comfortable with the 6. I think I would rather get back into a conversation sooner than later, is just kind of my perspective on that. But I understand where you're coming from with raising the bar too. I can understand that. I'm just more comfortable with 6.
So if we have an amendment to that.
Yes, we do. I'm looking to see if there's any other questions or comments on that. Okay, so we have an amendment to move from 6 criteria up to 8 to trigger a board meeting per the transition criteria that we have outlined. Sue, will you please take the roll call vote on the amendment?
Corey Montiel.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
No.
Patrick McCaffrey.
No.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien got knocked out by the software. They're working on bringing it back. Amanda Roddy.
No.
Diane Voigt.
No.
Joseph Como.
No. So it is defeated. Do you have the count? Is it 5-2?
2-5.
2-5. So the amendment is defeated, so we're back to the original motion of 6 of the 8 criteria to trigger a meeting of the board, the transition criteria to trigger a meeting of the board. Further discussion on the original amendment. Okay, Sue, please take the roll call vote.
William Baumgart.
Yes.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
No.
Patrick McCaffrey.
No.
Diane Voigt.
Yes.
Corey Montiel.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 5-2. Hey, Bill, still in the teaching and learning?
Okay, well, the other item we had from the T&L meeting the other night was the fall 2020 MAP results. Amy Ribo, Data Communications Liaison, reviewed the results of the fall 2020 administration of the Measures of Academic Progress, MAP, assessment. This test was administered to our students in grades K through 8. You have received information in your packet. I also encourage you that if you have any questions, you visit with Amy about that, because it gets to be a little bit difficult. And unless there's any questions.
Yes, that is a discussion
Yes, it
item.
is. That's correct.
Any discussion, questions on that? You see none?
Meeting, the T&L meeting will next meet on February 2nd.
Thank you, Bill. Moving on to our Government Relations Committee, given by Ms. Roddy.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has not met. However, individual members have been attending meetings. We're scheduled to report out to the full board in March.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. And moving on to our Safety and Security Committee, given by Ms. Reinacek.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I wanted to apologize for being short with you about my microphone.
Oh, no problem. I didn't even notice, actually.
The Safety and Security Committee met on December 21st, 2020. There were 2 information items on the agenda. The district COVID update. Dr. Cook provided an update of COVID quarantine and isolation student and staff data by school as of the date of the committee meeting. The district experienced an increase in the number of COVID cases and quarantines in October and early November this school year. Upon returning from Thanksgiving, we experienced a steady decline in the number of positive cases and quarantines in the district, as well as a decline in Waukesha County. A new School District of Waukesha chart was developed of known percent positive COVID cases linked to school transmission. According to the December 18th, 2020 data, 42 of the 5,841 who were quarantined this school year tested positive for COVID with a link to school transmission. The data suggests that the mitigation strategies in effect are working and keep the infection rate low in the school environment. Many of the COVID cases that we've had to address in the district are from contact outside of school.
This is a discussion item. Are there any questions or comments on this? Okay, Karen?
Thank you. And the transition plan update is next. Dr. Siebert and Dr. Cook shared the transition plan and the framework used as a reference when deciding to close a classroom or school. The COVID transition plan was summarized earlier this evening. That concludes my report. The next Safety and Security Committee meeting is scheduled for February 15th, 2021 at 6 p.m. right here.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us through our committee meetings for this evening. We will move on to our other business. And the first item under consideration is really the only item that we'll have to Oh, I'm sorry, we still have to do B. So we're looking at the approval of the secondary education model for the second semester of 2020-21. And Dr. Siebert, are you going to kick this off?
I would be happy to, Mr. Como.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I just want to start by thanking you all for your perseverance as we've worked through this pandemic. And I think collectively, we all want the same thing in the community. It's just we've maybe differed at times on how we get there. So I thought what we could do tonight is outline where we've been since this pandemic started almost 10 months on the date ago. And as you remember, and Mr. McCaffrey talked about earlier, we were all across Wisconsin completely virtual from mid-March until the end of the school year. And we then spent time over the spring and summer, and you'll remember our reopening committee that was led by Dr. Cook and Mr. Montijo, had a number of staff members, parents, and community members. I was fortunate to be able to join that group in July. And the work of that group led to the intensive mitigation strategies that we've employed since September, and that have allowed us to stand out really, truly, and honestly as the only large district in the state of Wisconsin that's been open for in-person learning in some way, shape, or form, which I think we should be tremendously proud of. We've been successful with our elementary schools being open 5 days a week, and as you know, we've used both 2-day cohort and 4-day hybrid approaches at the secondary level. We now are at the point to think about the second semester, which begins on Tuesday, January 26th, and the rest of the school year. So let's start by talking about our COVID data. As you've seen here tonight in a couple of different ways, since Thanksgiving, for the most part, we've had more favorable district data as it relates to cases and quarantines among students and staff. As of today we have 34 student cases and 206 student quarantines, and we have 12 staff cases and 35 staff quarantines. That's strong data for us and shows that our mitigation strategies truly are working. This morning on our county call, we learned that hospital data is stable, if not decreasing, which is also positive from a community perspective. And as we talked about earlier tonight, Dr. Cook and I have been very grateful for your support in allowing us to work with principals, our nurses, our contact tracers, to make those classroom and school level decisions. And we've learned a tremendous amount doing that together since September and feel comfortable continuing to do that moving forward, impacting the least amount of students and staff possible. If we add in the transition criteria that you just approved, we now also, through our learning and experience, have what we need to bolster our dashboard, to provide additional transparency to our constituents, and to be able to monitor consistently the data to bring the board together if we start to see some consistent patterns and trends in the data. I also wanted to just briefly talk about vaccines, because we are starting to see some light at the end of this very long tunnel. And we learned just today that our school nurses and our health room and isolation staff will have the chance to get their first vaccine. It'll be the Pfizer vaccine on Friday of this week. That will be 52 people. And at your places, you will see a letter that I wrote advocating that all of our educators become part of Tier 1B in Wisconsin. That's the next tier of vaccination, which may be decided next week at the state level. So I think we have a number of things that are moving positively in our favor. And as a compilation of all of those pieces and looking to provide the best possible teaching and learning opportunities in the school district of Waukesha, you will see also at your places the administrative recommendation, which is to return to full-time, face-to-face, 5-day per week learning at the 6-12 level beginning the second semester on Tuesday, January 26th. So what I'd like to show you is just a graphic that MJ, as she always does, helps make that will show the choices and the options that our families will have and the consistency that such a model would create across the school district of Waukesha. So on the screen, as it pops up here, you will see what we currently do at the elementary level is we have full 5-day face-to-face learning. We have our School District of Waukesha virtual program where kids are partnered with a classroom teacher in a virtual format. And then we have our eAchieve program, which we learned about this evening from two fabulous students and Mr. Smith. Should the board adopt the administrative recommendation, at the secondary level, we would be very comparable. We would have full face-to-face learning opportunities for our students. We would maintain our live stream instruction for students who were either ill or positive, who are quarantined, or who feel uncomfortable because of the pandemic coming back as jointly decided by their family. And we would also continue to have our eAchieve option. So there's never been any easy decisions in this pandemic, as you well know. And we think, based on our data, based on the light at the end of the tunnel that is starting to approach, and based on a compilation of these factors, including the transition criteria, that the recommendation to move toward this more consistent approach across the district is appropriate. So I'll stop there and would welcome certainly the opportunity to answer any questions, and Dr. Cook will support me in that.
Yes, Diane.
Just a couple things. On Tuesday of this week, we attended, three of us attended a seminar on back to school in a pandemic. And it was it's the superintendent of La Crosse, the superintendent of Eau Claire were there. And I think it really reinforced and highlighted the fact that our use of our transition criteria and being in our current model has made us a standout in the state compared to Madison still virtual and voting to continue virtual second semester. You know, and again, not knowing about, again, the rest of the schools in the higher populations, it's the size of districts. But I think it was, I wrote a note afterwards to Dr. Cook and said, you know, he should have been there as one of the presenters because the title was Back to School in a Pandemic, and just the notion that, you know, we are in a very different place than a lot of other schools, especially big schools in the state of Wisconsin. And I think that's because of our using the mitigation strategies that have been in place all along. You know, the masking, the sanitation, the social distancing, et cetera. So I think you're to be commended for that. The other follow-up that was, again, part of SWSA discussions was the idea of going to the, I went to them originally with an idea that Kurt had to see if we could get the legislators to make a statement that teachers, schools should have early access to vaccinations. And when I contacted Representative Allen, I found out that they've approved the money for it, and then all the distributions on DHS. So that's when we became familiar with the address that's on the message that's at your desk that Dr. Siebert has written. I have personally made a commendation to them as well. In mine, I said that I really think it's important not just to have teachers, but to have our food service staff, to have our bus drivers, to have our custodians, and especially our subs, all the people that are in our sub pool, to have access to that vaccination process as soon as possible as the highest consideration in Tier 1B, which is what they're going to be reviewing. They thought Friday or Monday that this committee would be making that decision. And I think anybody who could speak to the fact that we should have a chance to be able to move up the ranks, they're trying to decide who to get the vaccines out to, and I think we should speak, we should lobby to that. You know, and I was very impressed to see the communication that Dr. Siebert has done on behalf of the school district.
Other questions of the proposed administration plan? Comments? Yes, Bill?
Not really a question. And just kind of give you some insights into what I'm thinking, where I'm thinking, why I'm thinking this stuff. As you know, I've been a supporter along of the hybrid system. I think it's been effective. A lot of pluses to it. I know that we heard the opposite of much of that this evening, but reality is it's worked smoothly. A lot of the kids think it's best, etc. I've also always been very concerned about safety, particularly with our staff, that they've had, you know, they're exposed to situations. If you look at one of the charts we've received recently, the safety concerns of our teachers, 78% feel safe with the hybrid model, but only 21% feel safe with the 5-day model. That's something that is bothering me. But on the other side of things, I'm beginning to see some value in going ahead with what we're talking about here. There's elements to me that are interesting. I have never been a fan of not doing 5 days, except for the situation that we are currently in. So I'm talking about the 5 days now. I was kind of hoping that we would be getting this vaccinations in time for the teachers to be vaccinated before the 26th. Now, there's a little iffy if we'll make it or not. Certainly, if we could do that, I'd feel very positive about moving to the 5 days, but we don't know. I guess we're going to have to just wait and see how that turns out. It's beginning to look like at least soon, if not in 10 days or whatever that amounts to. Other concerns, obviously, administration feels that this is possible. The change to 5 day is possible, and they've got some background on this that makes me feel more comfortable. Again, the safety issue for the teachers and the fact that they're cramming all these people into the rooms with possibilities, but we're looking healthier. So the vaccination issue, the administration's feeling, and I do think we have to take a look at our academics. There's been a lot of indications tonight that would indicate that we're doing a failing job. I need to hear from administration, not tonight, but sometime, as to whether we really are as horribly looking as horribly as we were told tonight. So we're going to hear some more about that from administration down the way, I hope. So that gives you a little bit of a feel for where I am on this thing. I'm beginning to see a shift, and I'm hoping it works. Quite simply, I'm hoping it works. So that's where I am.
Yes, Diane?
I was really impressed to see the initiative to go back to full face-to-face, the 5 days a week, schools open, rather than the virtual Monday. And I really have a concern that the virtual Monday allowing for contact tracing, especially when the quarantining is one of the things that's really taking away from the kids' learning opportunities. I think less time to do that can be replaced with another day in the face-to-face kind of environment. And I think to continue, one of the things I'd like you to consider is to continue the opportunities that we know are safe because of the hybrid model, is to use that extra day each Monday being back and go to an A-B continuous model. And that would give the kids extra opportunities to be face-to-face, but still maintain the mitigation strategies, the social distancing that we know has been successful, and that we know that the staff feels makes them safe in that environment until they can get a vaccination to feel safe for those reasons.
Mr. Montiel?
When you say AB, are you suggesting full face-to-face 5 days?
5 days, but stay in that 80 model.
So the kids would get 2 days of face-to-face?
They'd get 2 days 1 week, 3 days the other. So we'd be adding an extra day.
So it's not 5 day face-to-face?
The schools are open 5 days face-to-face, is what I would suggest. Get away from the virtual Monday, which I think has been a deterrent from them having as much motivation to be on task and part of what their classmates are doing. So,
understand.
And then the other thing I would propose is that any students, as we're hearing the failure rates, I think any student that has any Fs should automatically be in that full 5 day mode, not in an 8, like we've already done with our special needs students, allowing them to be in if they have a learning need that would allow them to be able to be successful. For the students that, are ADHD or, and just don't learn, it's not their preferred learning style to be able to do it virtually, but to allow them all to have the chance to be back on a full day, all 5 days. And then with the virtual going on with the AB kind of situation, the kids that would prefer to not be there all the time, consider the full enrollment kind of numbers that we saw didn't work very well back in November. I think there's a real concern. We go back to that and look at all the red flags that were in November. We got a lot closer to having to shut down and then get back to into a virtual model that's not successful for anybody.
Mr. Montiel, that's a follow-up, right?
It is. I just can't support that, Mrs. Voigt. The two things that matter to me most are, I think the data has shown that the kids are safer in school. than they are in the community. The teachers are safer and staff are safer in school than they are in the community. And the second bit, and I think her name's Ms. Flattery, I think I'm putting a T in there by accident, the data she was able to compile and the parents, I'm sorry? Flaherty, I'm sorry. And the parents who chipped in, I think within about a half hour to pay that fee, is more than persuasive. It's compelling. It's our report card. For better or for worse, what has happened with hybrid, that's our report card. So I understand your thought process. I just disagree because I think the kids and staff are safer in school. And this report card indicates a compelling reason to get them back full-time. Thank you.
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Boyd, are you suggesting that right now, then, our secondary learning is at 4 days a week?
It would be, with an AB model, you'd have AB, like in the 2-week cycle, you'd have AB 5 cycles.
Okay, so the way that you're explaining it, you're still only having half the kids in the school every day.
Unless they have a need because of a failing grade, because of a learning style issue, because of a special needs IEP.
Okay, so
then
that's
they
not
would be able
full,
to come in.
So it's not full face-to-face. Because then right now, we would be at 4 days a week. Correct?
And there are special needs students that are in 4 days a week, right?
I
Dr.
just
Cook?
mean our regular students right now. The way that you're counting it, we would be in 4 days a week right now. But they're not. They're in 2.
Because of the virtual, one day, right.
No. Half of the kids are in school 2 days a week.
Right.
And then the other half is in school the other days of the week.
Right.
The way that you're counting the AB, that's still not full face-to-face, 5 days a week.
That is
School is open.
The school is open now, 4 days a week, but
Right.
the kids are only getting 2 days in the school.
So I think I'm just going to try and summarize. Right now, the kids who are not with special needs go face-to-face 2 days.
Yes.
Okay? And I think every week, and they're in cohorts. And I think what Diana's proposing is the first week, one group would go 2 days, another cohort would go 3 days, and then they'll flip the next week.
Yep.
So of the 10 school days, essentially, students would be face-to-face 5 of the days. Is that correct, Diane?
I get that. I totally get that.
So you're correct when you say that students would not get 5-day full face-to-face. Is that correct, Diane?
Well, they could if they have the learning need, the special ed need.
There would be exceptions.
The exceptions.
Potentially.
And I think
Okay.
the exceptions would allow many of the students that are now failing a class, especially a senior failing a class, would be expected to be there the full 5 days. But allowing the opportunity for those who would like to still maintain the social distancing of the AB model, that would still be available, that the classes wouldn't be full every day. They'd be able to take advantage of the 1 day live streaming. This model is saying it's either you've got to be there full 5-day face-to-face or you're full live streaming.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that are comfortable with the cohort right now that would not be comfortable with having to be full day live streaming. Like that's their whole life is just live streaming.
Okay. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. President. So you're saying unless you are K through 5, have special needs, or are failing, you cannot go to school 5 days a week.
And that's something we could talk about, that we could make that option available for those who want to do it. But I don't think we want to eliminate the AB cohorts that have been successful for a lot of people, that they do want that option still.
So you're saying the kids who are kind of hanging on in the middle or are successful right now cannot go to school 5 days a week. They have to be failing, be in special needs, or be younger than 11 years old.
The concern is that not everybody feels comfortable being back in a full face-to-face because of the numbers. And that would
that's
totally
why we've
eliminate the
always
social distancing.
offered e-achieve and virtual. what we're asking for, what I'm asking for, is to give the parents the option. We've asked them 3 times, 3 surveys, what would you like? And all 3, we have ignored the option to go full 5 days face-to-face for everyone. That's not been on the table.
Mr. Montijo, and then followed by Mr. McCaffrey.
Thank you. Mrs. Voigt, my understanding of your proposal is that that would add 1 day of instruction for every student for a 2-week period, which is essentially hybrid, but it adds 1 day, A or B or hybrid. It doesn't fix this. It doesn't fix adding 1 day. It doesn't fix these abysmal increases in failures, GPAs. It doesn't fix that. And I understand the motivation to have a failing student, literally an F student, come into school because they've got to fix that. But it's not just the failing students that need face-to-face instruction. It's the student that always gets an A. Now they have a B because they're virtual. They want to get in there and fix it. A couple gentlemen spoke, and I think a woman too, about they're competing against kids who are full face-to-face, getting those grades. I think everybody has said, even I think one of the teachers or band instructors said, look, kids do better in face-to-face. So I'm not sure why adding 1 day would fix this problem. And I keep trying to sum this up because we've talked about this ad nauseum, and we could spend another 3 hours, which nobody wants to do. I tried to look at everything, read it all, and one person sent me this, and they said, they summarized it the best. It says, give people the choice to choose. I don't remember who said it, but it was brilliant. That's what this does. Live streaming is better than virtual. It's better than virtual. I think, Karen, you're absolutely right. So, respectfully, I just can't support it.
Patrick?
No, I'm suggesting.
There is no motion on the floor right now.
So it's just a matter of.
Turn on your mic. There is no motion on the floor right now. We're just having discussion. As a matter of fact, I think we should probably just bring it back more to questions of administration. Otherwise, there is a formal recommendation by administration. Mr. McCaffrey?
Yeah, I move that the board approve the administrative recommendation to return to 5 days of face-to-face instruction for all students in grades 6 to 12, effective at the start of the second semester on Tuesday, January 26, 2021. This motion includes continued live streaming at the 6-12 level to meet the needs of students who become ill, are quarantined, or otherwise prefer learning from home during the pandemic, as decided jointly with their parent and or guardian. And I so move.
I'll second.
Is there a second? So you seconded by Mr. Montijo. Discussion? Yes, Mr. McCaffrey?
Everybody here knows my opinion on it. I think we should be back face-to-face 5 days, and I'm going to vote in favor of going back face-to-face 5 days. But I think that as a corollary to that, we do need to address the quarantine times that we are currently in and investigate whether we can reduce those. I know that my doctor is not in favor of a quarantine over 7 days because the science makes it clear that you're going to have symptoms within 7 days. So there's a lot of doctors out there that do not favor anything more than 7 days because it's going to present itself within 7 days.
Quarantine over 7 days because the science makes it clear that you are going to.
Beyond the 5 days, I think that we definitely need to look at the quarantine issue and where we're going to go with that for the second semester. Forward. Thank you.
Mr. Baumgart?
I pretty much said where I'm at with this, and giving it a whirl, even though it's not my appetite. And I do agree with the fact that we've got to look at the quarantining. And the other thing, I think we have to have some clarity on where we really stand with the number of students that
with this, and giving it a whirl.
They know more about that from administration, not from the public.
And I do agree with the fact that we've got to look at the quarantining. And the other thing, I think we have to have
getting a little bit of
clarity on where we really stand with the number of students with this.
There was something else I was going to add.
They know more about that.
Could you mute? I'm sorry.
With the fact that we've got to look at the quarantining. And the other thing, I think we have to have getting a little bit
Kurt, can you mute? I'm sorry. A lot of feedback, we think, because you're not muted. Or maybe it's someone else. Hasn't been showing up like that all right.
Yeah, I'm not getting sound out. They're on mute. Yeah, they're on mute. Okay.
Kurt, could you mute? I'm sorry.
Okay.
We'll try to continue here. Yeah, Bill, just talk loudly.
There we go.
Oh, I do see it. Yes, I do see it.
Okay, the other thing that concerned me.
I wonder, so you can hear us though, Kurt, right? You can hear us? Can you hear us, Kurt? Sure, that's fine. We'll let Bill first finish his comment though, and then
before I forget.
Yes, sorry, Bill.
Well,
technical difficulties.
Yeah, I understand.
No, I can hear you on YouTube. I can't hear you on this. Yeah.
Okay, the other thing, listening to what Diane was trying to present, I mean, if that would work, that'd be interesting, but it doesn't give you the 5 days that we're talking about in 5 days here, so that's a problem. But even to try and put all those rest of those pieces together with the staff that's on marginal anyway would probably be difficult, just a combination. I actually thought about, could we have, at the high school level, could we have, of our 3 buildings, could we have one of them be a hybrid building and 2 of them be a 5-day? And I thought, this is ridiculous, just making it far more complicated than necessary. So I backed off in my mind about that one. But again, I said, I'm willing to try this. So that's where I am.
I want to give Kurt a chance. I know he's been trying to get in here. Kurt, can you hear us? Okay, go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that we can shorten up this discussion. I think the administration has a plan. I understand both sides on this issue, and certainly we need to improve on how we provide services, and I think the 5-day pull back to school plan gives us that. But at the same time, we got a significant safety issue that needs to be dealt with. And I think we need to reassess our in-school safety procedures so that we can reduce the risk to staff, and recognizing that students themselves are less at risk from severe health factors. So there's a lot of things working in our favor. We know masks work better than some people had anticipated. We know that the flus have not been as bad, and that the flu season is going to, pretty much as we start the second semester flu season, will start to wind down anyway. So I think we should just make a really difficult decision, trust our administration, and also trust our administration to come back to us when they need to, instead of trying to tie their hands, and let them come back to us and then let us decide. But I don't know why we would need a long, drawn-out discussion on this particular issue. I do understand that everybody should have their point of view expressed, but the administration has said this is what they want to do.
I'm not sure who is up first.
I'll defer.
Okay. Ms. Roddy.
Now I have to have my thoughts all together. No, I do. I just want to quickly just make my statement, because I agree with Kurt. I don't want this long and drawn out. I just want to address our community, thank our parents and community members who shared their experiences, who shared reading materials that took me all the way back to my graduate days. That was a lot, but thank you. For me, the concern at the beginning of the school year is we just didn't know enough of what COVID was going to do to our community, how it was going to impact our families, and we heard at the beginning of the school year that there were a majority of the families that still wanted FaceTime, but we just didn't know. So a portion of us chose to go with hybrid. However, I am considering and listening, and I have been reading what has been sent to us. We've seen that our mitigation practices seem to be working. We are fortunate, and hopefully it'll stay, that our elementaries will continue to do well in the 5-day. I've spoken with the individuals in the medical field, followed data, About the hospitals, we have hope the vaccine is coming to our community here very shortly. I've had individual conversations with each of our secondary principals to ask their perspective on maintaining a 5-day a week learning model. The fact that our administration has a plan in place. Just as being all virtual was a concern for me in that if we started it, how long would we stay in that model? I believe it or not, do have the concern that if we're in hybrid, how long are we going to stay in this model? We went into the beginning of this school year slowly, carefully together, and I think that we can do that going into 5-day, given the information that we now have.
Mr. Montijo.
Thank you. Well stated, Mrs. Roddy. We do have a lot of information, and I know the question of quarantine was talked about. We can always study further, but this isn't an exact science. So I think I'd prefer to deal with the issue of quarantining now, so I'd offer an amendment to the motion. Is there a motion on the table?
There is a motion
okay,
on
I'm
the
sorry,
table.
it's been a late day.
Yes.
Amendment that you only allow for quarantining for contact that occurs on school district Waukesha grounds, where student staff shall only be quarantined when they've been within 6 feet of an individual who tested positive for COVID-19 or its variant, if either party was unmasked at any point during said contact. Staff and students who've tested positive for COVID-19 or its variant and are out of isolation are exempt from quarantine unless they subsequently test positive for COVID-19 or its variant. I read it. I know it's dense.
Is there a second to that motion? Bring it by Karen? Okay, go ahead, Corey.
I'm sorry. I have it typed out if people want it.
Yeah, Sue should get it.
Okay.
And I don't know if I caught everything in it, honestly. So actually, would you mind just going through the points again?
Sure. As Mr. Clark's handing it out.
Oh, thank you.
It's changing the policy.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
That was a lot.
It was. It's changing the policy of quarantining in the school district of Waukesha to be more closely aligned to that in Ohio and I think those 6 or 7 other states. In a nutshell, and it's more particularly laid out in my written narrative, if both people, whether it's students to student or staff to student or staff to staff, are masked and they are within 6 feet of each other, and one person is subsequently tests positive, the person who is within 6 feet, long as both those people were masked, does not need to be quarantined. Obviously, the person who tests positive is going to be isolated, but if the person they came in close contact with is masked, they don't need to be quarantined. I think the studies have shown in Ohio and those other states that that's appropriate. And then the subsequent or section part of that amendment is saying, look, under the same circumstance, if the person who is tested positive comes into contact with someone who is already out of quarantine, out of isolation, because it had COVID, it doesn't apply to them, even if there's an unmasking. It basically says, if you've already had COVID, you can't be quarantined again, unless you are exhibiting new symptoms of COVID-19 or its variant. The other side is 2 individuals within 6 feet of each other. If they're both masked, one is healthy, one is positive for COVID. The positive for COVID is isolated. The person who is healthy is not quarantined. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay. Questions, comments, discussion? Yes, Bill?
Corey, there's no definition in here of the length of the quarantine. Any definition in there? Oh,
Bill, can you
sorry, yeah.
mic on?
There's no definition here of the length of the quarantine. Does that need to be included in here?
It could be, certainly.
You don't, I'm not asking for it. I'm just wondering whether that would add to it or not.
I don't need it in there because I think it would still follow the same.
So we will follow our, okay.
I believe, yeah, that's what my intent was. And it's currently 10 days, not 14. 7 or 10, correct.
Kurt?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My concern is that originally last fall when we did this discussion and we started working on models, we did a legal consultation about what would be the liability for the board and the district and based on the decisions we made. And when it came to COVID and infections, the guidance I recall was that as long as we followed the county guidelines, county and state guidelines, you know, the public health officials in our state, we should be safe in what we choose to do with our decisions in the school district. And I'm concerned that since we're trying to follow something in a different state that we really don't have enough details on. I've seen the Ohio stuff, and I don't think it reads the same as Mr. Montiel has presented it. I don't want to argue about it because I don't have it in front of me, but I'm most concerned about what Wisconsin is doing, and I'm certainly willing to advocate to the public health authorities that we want to improve and reduce our quarantines, but I don't think we can go against their guidance as a district without taking on significant risk.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Yes, Diane.
And I agree with that, because I did bring it up before the doctors from medical college, earlier this week. And because it hasn't been accepted yet in Wisconsin, I think we're going on a limb. I think we should be open to monitoring that and making that change as soon as it is possible, that our Wisconsin guidelines, that we're in compliance with our Wisconsin expectations.
Mr. Montiel?
Thank you. As part of the CARES Act, there is some limited liability for certain organizations and entities. That's not a given, though. No one's immune from litigation, trust me. No one's immune from litigation. There can be a statutory immunity for something. You can still get sued. There's no individual liability for people on the Board of Education as long as you're acting within the authority of their position. Here, litigation, from a public policy point, from an elected body saying we understand what the recommendations are from the CDC, the DHS. If we as an elected body choose something else, good luck suing us. I would be shocked if it happens. Plus, if it does, it gives the school district Waukesha the best platform in the world to talk about what we've done, why it makes sense, and why it's been successful. So I think the odds of being sued are extremely small. That doesn't factor into my consideration.
Yes, Diane?
I think what we looked at earlier this evening is how responsive our administration has been to the change when it did come in, the drop from 14 days to 7 or to 10, et cetera. And I believe as soon as it's considered to be acceptable, that they will do the same thing. That rather than trying to tie their hands with emotion now, I think, I trust that they're going to go to the best language for quarantine that we possibly can have. Because it isn't, ideal to have people out on extensive quarantines. I totally agree that if they've tested positive, why do you have to be quarantined? Because you're supposedly have 3 months of immunity. That again, I don't know that has to be in our motion. I think that should just be part of our policy per se related to this. I don't know that it should necessarily be tied to this decision. I think that's a really separate issue to address quarantine and be as flexible as we can to minimize the amount of time based on whatever guidelines are provided.
Mr. Montiel?
Last point. In my mind, the goal is not to adopt a policy that says full face-to-face 5 days. The goal is to keep kids in school. It's a two-step process in my mind. Adopt full face-to-face, but make sure we can keep the kids there by changing this quarantine policy. And changing the quarantine policy, in my mind, doesn't make it more dangerous. Because of the chart that came out today and shows how many kids are quarantined, how many kids were subsequently moved from quarantine to isolation, and how many cases of those were moved from quarantine to isolation were subsequently tested positive. It's 0.72%. It's extremely low. And I don't remember the percentage for educators and staff, but I think it's even lower. To me, that suggests that restricting the quarantine model, make it less broad, is appropriate, timely, and safe.
Amanda?
Yes, thank you. Well, I can appreciate what you're proposing here, Mr. Montiel. I had some things that, for me, that I'm looking at is if we go back 5 days, we're essentially removing the possibilities of having the 6 feet because we've got more bodies. I mean, that's obvious there. So we would be removing one of our biggest mitigation pieces. We don't know fully yet, as Ms. Rodchek was saying earlier, what it's going to be like once everybody comes back in. We just have to wait because time's going to tell. Our contact tracers, just as the board and our administration, they're learning as we go along. Our state hasn't given us directive, as Dr. Cook has shared with us earlier yet regarding this new proposal of quarantines. I'm open to monitoring it going forward if the board chooses to go to 5-day, just as we've done so far. We've monitored things and then administration has come to us making the recommendations to change. I think based off of our experience, if we end up going back 5-day, we could be the leader in the state and go to DHS and say, hey, this is what we've experienced. As a district our size, we would recommend that you adjust the quarantine based on our experience. So, hope that made sense, but that's just how I'm looking at it. If the board chooses to go 5-day, I think we need to hang on to this so that we have a little more time to see how it's going to affect the student life.
Karen?
Well, I think that's why we vote on it. Corey brought it up, we vote on it, and we see how it goes.
All right, any other questions or comments on the amendment? Okay, I'm going to read or I'll have Sue read the amendment.
no.
Please. You want me to read it, or would you like to?
Go for it, Joe.
Okay. So the amendment under consideration is for contact that occurs on School District of Waukesha grounds, student and staff shall only be quarantined when they have been within 6 feet of an individual who tested positive for COVID-19 or its variant. If either party was unmasked at any point during said contact. Staff and students who have tested positive for COVID-19 or its variant are out of isolation, are exempt from quarantine unless they subsequently test positive for COVID-19 or its variant. Sue, will you please take the roll call on the amendment?
Kurt O'Brien.
No.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
No.
William Baumgart.
No.
Diane Voigt.
No.
Corey Montiel.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
No. Pat does not pass. It fails 5-3. Okay, so we're back to the original motion. And that is, let me read it for us so we know what's under consideration. It's a motion that the board approve the administrative recommendation to return to 5 days of face-to-face instruction for all students in grades 6 through 12, effective with the start of the second semester on Tuesday, January 26, 2021. This motion includes continued live streaming at the 6-12 level to meet the needs of the students who become ill, are quarantined, or otherwise prefer learning from during the pandemic as decided jointly with their parent or guardian. We're clear on the original motion. Is there any further discussion on it? Yes, Diane.
I have a concern that we definitely heard from 20 very passionate parents who are advocating for getting their kids back to school face-to-face. But there are many who didn't come tonight out of fear of the protest and the hype about the protest of what was going to be happening here. We've had mostly that perspective that was heard from our comment section tonight. And I feel that we need to take a look at the mitigation strategies that have been working and the concerns that were at our desks tonight in terms of, what has been working. My concern is that the 6 feet, as Amanda just mentioned, will not be possible when we bring 30 kids back into a small classroom, if everybody would choose to come back. So my question is, what changes are we going to be having in our mitigation procedures if we make this modification? Because everybody has the same lunch hour kind of situation, when everybody's back. I don't think at the high school levels especially is necessarily the safest plan. That worked on a hybrid when half of them were there. but is that going to be safe? I guess my concern is what are our mitigation strategies as we transition to this?
So I think, Joe, Dr. Cook, do you want to comment on discussions that have been taking place?
Yeah, when we set out at the beginning of the year, we were originally designing a plan for 5 days a week. That was what we talked about, Mr. Montillo, and the mitigation committee, and we never guaranteed social distancing in that plan. We knew that, or physical distancing, we never knew that we always acknowledged that if we had all of our students in school, we would never be able to physically distance. And when we start to think about what we're doing currently at the elementary level, the kids in the elementary level aren't physically distanced either, simply based off of the furniture. So we never guaranteed physical distancing in this mitigation plan because we knew that we could not accomplish that. Now, what has happened as a result of the choices that we've offered people, even when we were in 4-day, because kids picked virtual, either the SDW type virtual experience or eAchieve, we did see a drawdown in the number of kids that were in schools. So for instance, I think it's like North High School right now has 900 and some kids out of a possible 1,100, 1,150 attending full time. So you see fewer kids there as a result of the choices that families are making. But we never did say 6 feet is possible. And it's not possible when you look at the full scope of students coming back to school.
Mr. Montillo.
Thank you. I just wish people would reconsider using the word protester, especially these days. It has a negative connotation. I think all of us were out in the hallways and walked through the crowds. When I walked through the room on this floor and the overflow upstairs, I saw moms, I saw dads, and I saw little kids. There was a little girl who was no taller than the bottom of that plexiglass, barely. And I think she was for hybrid. They're kids, they're moms, they're dads, they're teachers. I understand the term, but they're not protesters. They're patriots, regardless of what side of the issue they are. They're showing up and doing one of the best parts of the First Amendment, petition their government for redress of grievances. So I think it was just, I would just prefer people to use that word.
Yes.
Oh, Joe?
I was so sorry. If I could just add on the mitigation piece. I mean, we're still doing all the screening pieces. We still have our COVID response rooms. We still have the increased cleaning. We're still using the cleaning supplies that neutralize COVID. We still have the contact tracing team on. We still are requiring masking. We're doing all of the things that we have found that have worked, if we go into this particular direction. And then, not to go back to the last topic, but for people who have tested COVID positive, we're following the recommendation of not quarantining for 3 months. So that is a piece that we've also built into this, and as more people have tested positive, fewer and fewer people then result in quarantine. So.
Diane?
One of the things I had mentioned was the idea of the lunch. I've had a concern from the very beginning about everybody one day lunch kind of situation at the high school level, and then when we went to the 4-day, and then had a shutdown kind of situation, and that was a real concern. When they couldn't leave the campus because it was a lockdown.
Yeah.
And so again, that hopefully won't happen again. That's a fluke kind of thing to have a lockdown situation when you're in a new test run concept. But how can we address that, that time period?
The lunches at the secondary level, we met and we talked with the high school principals about this. They mentioned that they have 3 distinct locations that they're using: cafeteria, gymnasium, and auditorium spaces, that their upperclassmen are still leaving for lunch, which is drawing down the number of kids in the school. Mrs. Voigt, you mentioned the idea of what's if there's an emergency and we can't get everybody out. Those are the situations where you have to balance what's the level of safety that you're dealing with. We talk about that within the scope of fire drills and stuff like that. What's your fire drill procedure as it pertains to possibly an active shooter? The building's on fire, but you got somebody with a gun. What's more dangerous? Similarly with this, when we had that day, we did serve lunch. The lunchroom was not cleared and cleaned in between kids going through, but we didn't have 1,000 kids trying to access lunch all at the same time. We gave the principals the flexibility to, if lunch is between 4th and 5th period, the principals had the flexibility to go into 4th period, take some time from there, take some time from the lunch hour and then go into fifth period so that they could do what they needed to do. We just didn't have a good solution that particular day when there was a armed guy running around Waukesha that put all of our schools in a lockout situation. So I can't say how we would completely address that, but we do know that one of the things that we know now, much better than what we knew then, is that with each of the experiences that we've had, we now know how to handle that. So at North High School, just using that as the example, the administrative team there now knows how to deal with lunch if they're in a lockout situation, if the kids can't leave campus. They may be able to, tailor the lunch period a little bit differently, create different serving areas, release kids to lunch a little bit differently. It will be an inconvenience to kids and staff, but we can still get lunch to them. We just know how to address it in a better manner now. It's very difficult to address some of those things without having any prior experience. And like when I project myself then into, like let's say we talk about the spring of the year when you have weather. I would say there's a tornado that comes towards Waukesha. I mean, we're going to have to go to our most safe areas in schools, and that can be a very confined space, and it could be that way for a very long period of time. And if that's the case, we may have some COVID spread in school. I don't want to think that, but it's practical, I think, to say that that could happen. So you do the best that you can, but you can't suddenly create new tornado spaces. I mean, they're established.
Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, so.
Joe, Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah, I just think we need to recognize that, we're trying to do the right thing, just like we tried to do in previous decisions that we made. I've always felt comfortable following administration guidance. I think that they try to think things out. They have more time to work on this. And they too want to educate kids, all kids, and especially those that are struggling. In fact, when I brought up the test scores with administration today, they said that they felt one of the advantages of going to 5 days was to address, the issues kids have had. I think we also have to recognize that there is a much more contagious strain coming our way, and we're going to have to call on the community, like we've done in the past, to do what they can to socially distance, stay away from high-risk situations, do what they can to keep our kids healthy, our teachers healthy, and our community healthy. Because it's really about staying healthy. If we want to be successful in full face-to-face, and we really do, I'm not threatening to close anything. I want us to go from the day that we start full face-to-face all the way to the end of the year, and I want as few quarantines and as few shutdowns as possible. But to do that, everybody has to be in the game. And it'd be a good thing tonight for all of us to get in the game and approve the administration's recommendation. Thank you.
Questions or comments? I just want to take a moment to share some thoughts. I do think it's important to get back to face-to-face as soon as possible. We've always been moving in that direction. We all know that the best education is done face-to-face. We also know that our mitigation has been working. Our mitigation processes have been working. I too would like to, my hope is that the quarantine information that the state and the city or the county puts forward continues to lessen, if you wish, so that we can keep more students in-person learning. That is my hope. Reason why I didn't vote in favor of that was I do believe we need to follow the lead of our county and our state on that. I think that our data really is favorable now to move in this direction, and it is going to help from the social and emotional side of things, and dealing with again, the best way to learn is face-to-face. I think now is the right time to be moving forward in this direction. It's very difficult to balance all these things out. It has been the entire year. But where we're at right now, I personally believe that where this motion is going is favorable, and I do trust our administration. We will continue to monitor this as a board, and our parents will continue to monitor us and our students. We've heard from some students tonight that will do that also. And that's important, so appreciate that. So Sue, I think we know what the motion is here.
Did you want me to read that again?
Why don't we read it one more time, though?
Okay. Motion that the board approve the administrative recommendation to return to 5 days of face-to-face instruction for all students in grades 6 through 12, effective with the start of the second semester on Tuesday, January 22nd, 2021. This motion includes... 26, did I say 22nd? I'm sorry. 26. This motion includes continued live streaming at the 6-12 level to meet the needs of students who become ill, are quarantined, or otherwise prefer learning from home during the pandemic as decided jointly with their parent and guardian.
Okay, Sue, please take the roll call vote.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Corey Montijo.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye, passes 8-0, Sue. Thank you, everybody, for your debate on this important point. We do have one, so as we move forward, this will beginning of our second semester. Dr. Siebert, when will we be getting information out to all of our parents and students on this?
We'll work on that right away in the morning.
Okay. All right. The other thing that we're entrusting you, administration, as we always have, is to bring things forward to us that needs our attention, such as things changing on quarantining, and we would assume that you're going to continue to monitor that.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, we do have one item left tonight, and that is any recommendations for future Board of Education.
Shorter.
Yeah. I'm actually asking you to add to the agenda. What things would you like on the agenda? Yes, Karen.
Yes, I'm just following up on the recommendations of our constituents about looking at our scores and what we're going to do about that.
Okay, and that would most likely be tossed over to T&L, Teaching and Learning. Any other suggestions? Yes, Diane?
I would like to see the data that they were using and sharing today. This is my first awareness of the failure rates and, some of the kinds of concepts that they were describing. And I feel like I was blindsided to have that be a really compelling argument to be able to make this dramatic change in our schedule. That it'd be nice for us to see that before it's, and maybe she had to pay $500 to get it, but I don't think that that's a very, we still need to see it too.
Ditto.
Other suggestions? Okay, seeing none, we do not have a need for a closed session. Thank you, everybody, for respecting one another's thoughts tonight. We are adjourned.